Hi, I'm John. The autumn sun shone through the tall oak trees, casting soft shadows on our large family estate. Today, the place was filled with the chatter of relatives as we held our annual family reunion. The warm air smelled of roasting meat and fresh pie. My wife, Anna, who was very pregnant and glowing, stood beside me, smiling as we greeted cousins, uncles, and aunts arriving in large groups. "Honey, isn't it wonderful to have everyone here?" I asked. Anna squeezed my hand, her eyes scanning the crowd. "It is, but stay close. You know how your mom can be," she whispered. I noticed my mother, Helen, moving through the crowd, her eyes sharp and observant. As the day went on, the polite greetings turned into deeper conversations. Julia, my cheerful sister-in-law, joined Anna and me near the edge of the garden, offering some relief from my mother's watchful gaze. "So, John, that new case you're working on sounds tough, huh?" Julia asked, trying to shift the topic, which I appreciated. "Yeah, it's complicated, but it's nothing compared to handling family dynamics," I joked, though my eyes drifted toward where my mother was standing with my aunts, occasionally glancing at us. Anna noticed and tensed. "I wish she would just say what's on her mind. This silent judgment is exhausting," she muttered. "She just wants what's best for me, or at least that's what she thinks," I sighed. As the sun began to set, everyone gathered around a long table on the lawn for dinner. The air was filled with the sound of conversation, the clinking of silverware, and glasses raised in toasts. It was almost perfect, until my mother sat directly across from Anna and me. "John, I've noticed you've been busy with work lately. I hope you're still making time to ensure Anna is comfortable," Helen said, her voice sharp enough to make a few relatives stop eating for a moment. "Mom, Anna's doing great, right, dear?" I said, placing my hand on Anna's. "Yes, Helen, I'm fine and capable of looking after myself, but thank you for your concern," Anna replied, politely but firmly. Helen's lips thinned as she paused, her fork in the air. "Well, with the baby coming, you can't be too careful. I read an article the other day about how important it is for expectant mothers to avoid stress." "Really, Helen, I'm fine. John's been wonderful, and Julia has been a great help, too," Anna said, trying to shift the conversation. Julia quickly caught on and jumped in. "Absolutely, and wait till you see the nursery we've been working on. John, maybe you should show your mom the photos. It's coming together really nicely." And with that, the dinner continued. Helen's comments became sharper with each passing moment, subtly criticizing Anna's choices, from her diet to her decision to keep working late into her pregnancy. The tension at the table grew, and relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Finally, I stood up, tapping my glass to get everyone's attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," I said, "to family, by blood and by bond. May we always support and uplift each other, no matter what." Everyone raised their glasses in agreement, and for a brief moment, the mood lightened, but Helen's tight smile as she sipped her wine told me that the evening wasn't going to end peacefully. As the sky darkened, I had a feeling the real trouble was yet to come. Later in the evening, the warm atmosphere of the reunion started to fade, replaced by unease. The laughter and happy conversations that had filled the grand hall earlier were now replaced with a tense silence as we all moved toward the dining area for dessert. "Anna, wait till you try the lemon tart I brought. It's Julia's favorite," Aunt Margie said brightly, trying to lift the mood. "Oh, I'm sure it's wonderful. Julia's been talking about your baking all day," Anna replied, smiling as she linked arms with Julia. The two of them headed upstairs together, their dresses similar in style. But behind them, Helen's eyes narrowed as she mistook Julia for Anna. Her steps quickened, driven by a mix of resentment and a misguided sense of protectiveness. "I need to speak with you now, Anna," Helen called out, her voice sharp and urgent, but she was really calling out to Julia. Julia turned around, confused. "Helen, I think you," she started, but before she could finish, Helen, acting on impulse, pushed Julia. Thinking it was Anna, Julia lost her balance and fell down the stairs. The sound of her fall filled the hall, followed by horrified gasps as she hit the ground with a thud. "Julia!" Anna screamed, rushing down the stairs as the family stood in shock. Helen froze at the top of the staircase, her face pale as she realized the terrible mistake she had made. I pushed through the crowd, my instincts as a lawyer kicking in despite the personal horror unfolding in front of me. "Someone call an ambulance," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. John's command cut through the chaos as he knelt beside Julia, assessing her injuries. "Why would you do this, Helen? She's your niece," Anna's voice trembled with a mix of rage and fear. Helen, flustered and stammering, waved her hands helplessly. I thought she was you. I just wanted to talk. By pushing her down the stairs? John's voice was cold, his eyes searching his mother's face for an explanation that made sense. Moments later, Julia was taken away on a stretcher, and the house fell into a heavy silence. John pulled Helen aside, his tone a mix of disbelief and authority. What's going on, Mom? Your behavior tonight wasn't just out of line, it was dangerous. What did you think Aita was going to do? It's all those articles and talk shows, Helen muttered, wringing her hands. They say some women trap men with pregnancies. I thought she was manipulating you. Manipulating me? Anna's my wife. We're expecting a baby together. How could you believe such nonsense about her? John's frustration mounted as he ran a hand through his hair, struggling to understand how the mother he once knew had become someone driven to hurt out of irrational fears. I got scared, and seeing her, or who I thought was her, brought it all up, Helen admitted, her voice breaking. John shook his head, trying to process her words. Anna needs me, and Julia deserves justice. We're going to sort this out, but right now, I can't even look at you. He turned back to Anna, who stood by the door, her eyes red and swollen from tears. John's resolve hardened as they both waited for news about Julia's condition. The night air felt heavy with everything left unsaid, and the trust that had once bonded the family now lay shattered. The joyful reunion had dissolved into a harsh, sobering reality. As they faced the consequences of a misunderstanding that almost took a life, the hospital's fluorescent lights hummed quietly. John paced the narrow corridor outside Julia's room, deep in thought. Inside, Anna sat beside her sister, holding her hand as the soft beeping of medical monitors filled the air. The weight of the night's events pressed heavily on John as he considered the next steps. When John returned from the security office, he held a USB drive in his hand, the small device feeling heavy with what it contained. I got the CCTV footage from the house, he said. It's clear. Helen saw Julia and pushed her, no hesitation. Anna's tired, red eyes filled with confusion and pain. Why would she do this, John? It doesn't make any sense. Her voice cracked. It was deliberate. Anna, she thought she was pushing you. It's twisted, but it's right there, in black and white. Just then, the door opened, and Dr. Simmons walked in, his face serious. Julia is stable, but she has a concussion and a broken leg. It's going to be a long recovery. Thank you, doctor. Can we have a moment? John asked, his voice calm but firm. The doctor nodded and left the room. Once alone, John turned to Anna. I need to show you something. It's going to be hard to watch, but you need to see how far this went. They watched the footage on John's laptop. In the silent, grainy black and white video, they saw the terrible moment when Helen pushed Julia, sending her tumbling down the stairs. Anna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. Oh God, John, she really thought she was pushing me. John took a deep breath, his face serious. Anna, I've been thinking, we can't just let this go. Julia deserves justice, and we need to protect you and the baby. Anna looked at him, her voice trembling. What are you saying? I'm saying that my mother needs to face the consequences. I'm going to press charges. But she's your mother, John. Can we really go through with this? If we don't, what then? She nearly killed Julia. What if next time, it's you or our child? Anna slowly nodded, her own resolve strengthening. You're right. It's just hard. I know, John said softly, but it's necessary, for all of us. John stepped out of the room and made a few calls. He contacted the family attorney, explaining the situation and his intentions. The wheels were set in motion, and there was no turning back. Yes, I understand the consequences, but I can't let this go. She has to be held accountable, John said firmly, determination in his voice. Back in the hospital room, Anna's phone buzzed. It was a text from her brother-in-law, Michael, who had just heard about the incident. Is it true? What happened? Is Julia okay? Anna quickly responded, explaining what had happened and John's decision to press charges. Michael replied almost immediately, you have our full support. This is unimaginable, but necessary. John re-entered the room, gently squeezing Anna's shoulder. The lawyer's on board. We'll start the proceedings as soon as Julia is able to give her statement. The next few days blurred into a whirlwind of legal discussions and tense family meetings. Relatives took sides. Some couldn't believe Helen's actions, while others openly condemned her. John found himself increasingly isolated from many family members he had once been close to, his decision creating deep rifts that felt impossible to mend. One evening, as John and Anna sat quietly in the hospital cafeteria, Anna reached for his hand. "No matter what happens, we're in this together, right?" "Right, together," John replied, his voice steady and his grip firm. They returned to Julia's room, and John looked from his wife to his sister-in-law, his heart hardening for the battle ahead. The truth was unraveling, and with it, the image of a family that had once seemed unbreakable. In the courtroom, the air was tense, broken only by the shuffling of papers and occasional whispers. At the front, Helen sat rigidly beside her lawyer, her gaze fixed straight ahead. Across the room, John stood with Anna, preparing to witness his mother face justice. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. "This court is now in session," his voice echoed through the chamber. The prosecutor rose, holding a stack of papers, her voice clear and confident. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are here to address a serious act of violence, one that could have ended in tragedy. We will show that Helen acted not out of confusion, but out of malice, endangering the life of her niece, Julia, whom she mistakenly believed to be her daughter-in-law, Anna." Helen's lawyer then stood, his tone measured and composed. "We acknowledge the gravity of the situation. However, we argue that this was a misunderstanding, fueled by concern, not an intent to harm." Helen's lawyer began. As the trial unfolded, witnesses recounted the events of that fateful night. When Anna took the stand, her voice was steady, but filled with emotion. "I never thought we'd be here, facing such a heartbreaking family rift. Julia was mistaken for me, and it was no accident, it was intentional." The key moment came when the CCTV footage was presented. The prosecutor played the video, and the courtroom watched in stunned silence as the stark, undeniable images showed Helen pushing Julia. Gasps filled the room at the clarity of Helen's actions. John, watching the footage, felt torn between his roles as a son and an attorney, each frame of the video landing like a personal blow. When John was called to testify, he spoke of his mother's growing resentment and paranoia. "It pains me deeply, but I must stand for what is just. My mother's actions were deliberate and dangerous," he said, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. Finally, Helen took the stand, her voice trembled as she spoke. "I thought I was protecting my son. I saw what I believed was a threat to his future, to our family's honor. I'm sorry, truly sorry, but it was a mistake." The jury didn't deliberate for long. The evidence was overwhelming. Soon, the judge delivered the verdict. Based on the evidence presented, the jury finds the defendant, Helen, guilty of aggravated assault. The sentencing was swift, years of probation and a restraining order to protect Anna and her unborn child. The weight of the judge's words seemed to echo through the courtroom, a finality settling over everyone present. After the trial, as the crowds dispersed, John and Anna stood together outside. The tension of the past week seemed to lift, if only slightly. Anna looked up at John, her eyes filled with both sorrow and relief. "It's over, but how do we move on from this?" John took her hand, his voice calm yet resolute. "We rebuild, together, we focus on our future, on our family, we make sure our child knows love, not resentment." Their commitment to each other and their future child remained unshaken. And that concludes our story. What a journey it's been. Now, here's a question for all of you. If you were in John's position, would you press charges against a family member to uphold justice? Or would you find another way to resolve the situation to preserve family bonds? It's a tough choice between moral duty and family loyalty.
I thought Jonathan and I were doing well as a couple. At the beginning of our marriage, I believed he was a kind person. However, things started to get weird last year after Jonathan changed jobs and we moved to his hometown. Jonathan suddenly became eager to visit his parents' house. Whenever we had no plans on our day off, "Let's go to my house," he would suggest. Jonathan would say my house instead of my parents' house, which made it seem like his real home was there, and I didn't like that feeling. I hadn't realized he was so attached to his parents' home, and I believed. In fact, when we were moving, Jonathan hinted at wanting to live together with them, but I firmly opposed to it. Currently living at the in-laws are my mother-in-law Caroline and my sister-in-law Diana, just the two of them. My father-in-law had passed away before we got married. Caroline, a craft teacher who runs classes from her home, is quite independent. Always wearing clothes she made herself, commanding a presence. She's well known in the neighborhood, often referred to as teacher by locals. Their house is spacious, almost mansion-like. And as for Diana, she's actually a returnee, having recently divorced and moved back home. It seems she helps out with Caroline's craft classes. Jonathan, who loves his family home, would like to visit every week if possible. "I'm begging you, not every week," I pleaded. While Jonathan might find his family home refreshing, I certainly do not. It's just stressful. Although I understand Caroline's profession is being a teacher, her domineering attitude even outside of work is suffocating. It was strange how she insisted on being called teacher by everyone, not just her students. But that's beside the point. The real issue is Caroline's attitude towards me. As a craft instructor, I expected her to be strict, but her fixed ideas about how a wife should be were too much. The first time I visited, I got scolded for not tying up my hair. I don't usually tie my hair up at home, so the scolding came as a surprise. Her first words were, "Are you here as a guest?" Though I was reluctant, I apologized and tied my hair with an elastic band Caroline gave me. Then from there, it was hell. Even though I tied my hair, I was clueless about what to do in my first visit to the in-laws. "Is there anything I can help with?" I asked Caroline. "Can't you do anything without being told?" And she snapped, telling me to think for myself. I'm aware I'm slow and not very proactive, so it's not entirely Caroline's fault. But it's really troubling when I'm told to think for myself when I'm asking because I don't know. So, I tried vacuuming the living room and then, "Are you suggesting our floor is dirty?" she yelled. Then, seeing some dishes in the sink, I thought I'd wash them, but "Don't just barge into someone's kitchen like that. It's rude," she screamed. At this point, I was completely lost. Maybe Caroline just wanted to complain about something. No matter what I did, I got scolded, and I was at my wit's end. Meanwhile, Jonathan was lounging on the sofa, watching TV, and laughing with Diana. What's with this difference? Diana, despite helping out with Caroline's classes, is practically unemployed. Why am I the only one being put to work? The most shocking was dinner at the in-laws. "Let's order the usual steak tonight," Caroline suggested in a good mood. There's a fancy steakhouse nearby that they order from monthly. The steak from there is the best. Jonathan agreed happily. Oh, so it's that good. I was looking forward to it too. When the doorbell rang and the delivery person appeared. "Maya, can you pay for the steak?" Caroline said, handing me the money. I did as told, went to the door, paid, and received the steak. As I was carrying the steak to the living room, "Something's off!" I noticed something strange. There are only 3 steaks. At my in-laws' house, there are 4 adults, Caroline, Diana, Jonathan, and me. We're 1 short. I immediately went to Caroline. The delivery person must have made a mistake. There are only 3 steaks. And reported. Then Caroline. "That's correct, it's 3 orders, right?" "Huh? I didn't include you." "What? You can't even manage household chores properly, so practically you're a stranger, right? You don't deserve to eat our favorite steak," she said with a calm face. I was shocked. Can such a thing really happen? I looked at Jonathan, hoping he would say something to Caroline. But Jonathan seemed unfazed. "It's been a while since we've had steak here, looks delicious," saying with a smile. Ignoring me standing there dumbfounded, the 3 of them quickly set the table with steak, knives, and forks, and poured wine for a toast. They started eating the steak with relish. "What are you doing, Maya?" "Sit down since we're all eating," Caroline said. How am I supposed to sit down when I don't even have anything to eat? Looking at the table, there was a glass of water placed at what seemed to be my spot. I was so shocked and frustrated, I couldn't swallow a thing. When I got home that day, I immediately complained to Jonathan.
I don't want to go to your parents' house anymore.
Why?
Jonathan was surprised, but I was the one who should be. I told Jonathan that all I do at his parents' house is get bossed around. I don't know what to do, and I'm not even allowed to eat steak. Then Jonathan, it must have been because it was your first time, you didn't know how things worked. It's okay, you'll get used to it. You'll be able to eat steak next time, maybe, he said with an eerie smile. I didn't feel a hint of kindness or sincerity from Jonathan. And sure enough, I was invited to another meal, which felt more like a torment session, the next month and the month after. They would always order 3 portions of the usual fancy steak and only give me water. Jonathan is quite nice when it's just the two of us, but in front of Caroline and Diana, he just goes along with them. There's such a thing as too much, right? But I had given up. Such cruel harassment isn't normal, but having it repeated over and over, I might have become numb to it. Then one time, just as the 3 of them finished their steak as usual, Caroline suddenly said to me, "Maya, go pay for the steak." Me? I was astonished. Apparently, the delivery person had been busy during the summer and forgot to collect the payment. The owner of the fancy steakhouse said it was okay to pay next time. But Caroline, worried about appearances, didn't like the idea of not paying. So she told me to hurry and pay at the fancy steakhouse. But it's odd to go pay for a steak I didn't even eat. I thought Jonathan or Diana should do it, but both had already drunk alcohol and couldn't drive. Well, drunk or not, it seemed I was going to be the one to go anyway. So, begrudgingly, I drove to the fancy steakhouse as Caroline had said. Little did I know, this would be the beginning of a change in my fate. My first time visiting the family's favorite fancy steakhouse. I was nervous because I heard it was a fancy steakhouse, but as soon as I entered, I was greeted with a cheerful "Welcome" from the owner, which put me at ease. It was close to closing time, so there weren't many customers. I approached the counter a bit nervously. "I came to pay the bill," and said in a small voice to the owner. Then, the daughter from the craft teacher's house? Sorry to have you come all the way here to return it," the owner said loudly. Customers at the checkout turned to look, and I felt a bit embarrassed. Anyway, "Yes, thank you for always being so kind," I said. Then the owner, "How about it? Did you enjoy our steak?" he asked with a smile. I froze. What should I do? I've never eaten it. But if I honestly say I've never eaten it, he would be surprised. I thought about just saying it was delicious. But wouldn't it be rude to lie to a professional? I looked down, lost in thought. Then, "What's wrong?" the owner leaned in to ask. Did I say something wrong? It's okay to be honest with me, I won't get mad. All right, I'll just be honest. I looked up. I'm sorry, but I've actually never eaten your steak here. What? The owner exclaimed in surprise. You've never eaten our steak? Yes. But you've been ordering from us almost every month, haven't you? Yes. But I'm an outsider, so I'm not allowed to eat. What? The owner's face contorted. I'm sorry. I could only think to apologize. And before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. No, you don't have to apologize for this. The owner hurriedly reassured me, but his kind voice made me feel even more sorrowful, and I ended up crying like a child. Luckily, since the last customer had just left, No one else saw me crying except for the owner and his wife. Caroline always ordered 3 portions of the fancy steak, but the owner had always thought it was for Caroline, Jonathan, and me. That's because he didn't know Diana had moved back in. Of course, because Caroline kept her daughter's return a secret from the neighbors.
I wondered why you hadn't come to the restaurant to eat lately,
the owner said. Then,
to use our steak for harassment. What a terrible person.
You've been having a tough time, haven't you? The owner looked at me with concern as he said this, so I told him everything about the harassment I was facing at my in-laws. The owner listened silently with his arms crossed, but I could see his expression growing stern. When I finished, "Leave it to me," the owner said. What does he mean by that? I wondered for a moment. But I was so happy just to have someone listen to me that I didn't ask anything further and thanked him before leaving the store. On my way out, the owner's wife said, "This is leftover, but please have it if you'd like," and even gave me a parting gift. Since moving to Jonathan's hometown, this was the first time I felt the warmth of other people. The gift included a bit of steak. It was incredibly delicious. By the way, I ended up eating the steak in the car. I didn't know what they'd say if I brought it back to my in-laws. When I returned to my in-laws, as expected, Caroline said, "You're quite late. Did you make a detour somewhere?" But I felt so refreshed after venting to the owner that Caroline's snide remarks didn't bother me at all. A month later, we were invited to another meal at the in-laws. As usual, Caroline said, "Let's order steak today," and began to call the fancy steakhouse. However, when making the call, Caroline usually raised her voice an octave and spoke cheerfully, but this time the mood was different. Her voice was clearly subdued and low. I remembered what happened last month at the fancy steakhouse. The owner, "Leave it to me," had said. Perhaps he was upset about the harassment and refused Caroline's order? But it turned out not to be the case. After hanging up, Caroline said,
"It seems the delivery person is off today. They want us to come and eat at the store."
Caroline looked perplexed, frowning. Jonathan, "Maybe it's a good idea to go eat there for a change," cheerfully suggested.
"But, you know, a lot of neighbors go there,"
Caroline said. Caroline didn't want the neighbors to see Diana, who had moved back home. But Diana, unconcerned with her parents' feelings, "Let's go, I want to eat at the fancy steakhouse," was all for it. In the end, the 3 of them decided to go eat at the steakhouse, using a private room on the 2nd floor. Of course, I was left out. "Maya, could you take care of the driving?" Ordered by Caroline, I put the 3 of them in the car and headed to the fancy steakhouse. Upon arriving at the steakhouse parking lot, Caroline began to look around worriedly. Then, pushing Diana's back as if to hurry her along, they entered the restaurant. Caroline probably intended to sneak up to a private room on the 2nd floor without being seen by other customers. It seemed somewhat absurd to me that they were so concerned about being seen just to eat steak. Although Caroline told me to pick them up after they finished eating, coming back again seemed like a hassle, so I decided to wait in the car until they were done. Within 10 minutes, someone tapped on the driver's window. Looking outside, I saw Jonathan standing there. Too soon, could they have already finished eating? Jonathan gestured. "Get out of the car." When I opened the door, Jonathan muttered in an annoyed tone, "The owner told me to bring my wife. Here it comes." I was all excited inside. Not even sure what I was expecting, but feeling like something big was about to happen. As Jonathan led me inside, the place was nearly full, maybe because it was a weekend night. Then, Maya witnessed a surprising scene. Near the entrance at the counter, Caroline and Diana were sitting. Both were hunched over and shrinking. It seemed they hadn't been allowed into the private room upstairs. Surrounded by many customers. In front of Caroline stood the owner, arms crossed. In the midst of publicly scolding them. How dare someone who doesn't let their daughter-in-law eat steak call themselves a teacher? Aren't you ashamed? As the owner yelled, the surrounding customers nodded in agreement, saying exactly. I'm sorry. Caroline's face turned red, and she looked like she was about to cry. I later learned that most of the customers that day were acquaintances of Caroline, including students and associates from her sewing class. The owner's scolding exposed Caroline's harassment and the fact that she was hiding Diana's return. Noticing my arrival, the owner waved me over and had me sit at the counter. In front of me was placed a fancy steak. The owner stressed to Caroline, "You're not going to refuse to let your daughter-in-law eat today, right, teacher?" Caroline hastily denied. "Maya, please eat," making a strained face as she told me. After thanking the owner, I turned to Caroline. "Thank you for the meal, Caroline," who was looking down next to me, and said with a broad smile. The steak the owner cooked was incredibly delicious. From that day on, Caroline's reputation in the neighborhood plummeted. Once a proud teacher, Caroline was now known as an old person who was a vain bully. Naturally, people quickly distanced themselves from Caroline, and her sewing class students significantly decreased. Soon after, Jonathan and I divorced. Though the compensation from the divorce was modest, it was something. Jonathan seemed surprised that I was considering divorce.
"I just went along with Mom because I had to,"
he pleaded tearfully, but it was too late. I didn't want to stay with someone who would laugh while his wife was being harassed. Recording our interactions at the in-laws' house, which proved useful during the divorce, was also thanks to the owner's advice. Owning a fancy steakhouse for many years and hearing various people's stories, the owner had a wealth of knowledge about divorce. Now, I'm relaxing at my parents' home, having found a new job. And I'm planning to move out soon and live on my own. I'm in my late 20s, living alone in a detached house. Although it's a rental house, my parents moved to another state with my brother's family for his job transfer. And the rental offer came to me, who had been living nearby alone. This house has been rented by my family since my grandfather's time. And we have maintained a very good relationship with the landlord through generations. So, when the building became old, we discussed it with the landlord and took care of renovations and maintenance. From the landlord's perspective, and ours as a family, there was a mutual desire for us to live in this house. Additionally, my brother planned to return here in a few years, so it was decided that I would live here in the meantime. A little over a month ago, I moved back to my family home. Right after the move was completed, a crisis erupted at work, resulting in me facing an unexpected marathon of 20 consecutive days of intense work. Setting that aside for the moment, there were nights when I worked through till morning, staying at the company and only returning home to grab a change of clothes. My interactions with the moving boxes were limited to flipping them over and pulling out only what I needed. The landlord, concerned for me, would time my returns home to provide meals and would check in on me from time to time. Then, one exhausting day, "Everyone, I really appreciate it. You can go home now. Please, take it easy today." The department head announced the end of the grueling period. That day, after my night shift ended, I immediately hopped into a taxi and rushed home. Without even taking a shower, I dived into bed and fell asleep as if I had fainted, due to the resolved trouble at work and the accumulated fatigue. I was woken up at 7 a.m. by a stranger's voice. Excuse me, you can't just sleep in someone else's house.
What? What? Who are you?
I responded, panicking to the voice shaking me.
And who might you be? To sleep so deeply in someone else's house. We received a report of a break-in, so, can you get up? We need to talk at the station.
The man, wearing a police uniform, spoke to me.
Someone else's house? But this is my house. What are you talking about? Just get up, will you?
The police officer gestured to another female officer nearby to help me up. Then, from behind the police, an unfamiliar woman appeared.
Do you know this person? I don't know her. Please, just take her away quickly, she's scaring me. Wait a minute. What do you mean by breaking and entering? Enough with the grogginess. I'm not groggy. My ID is in my bag. Just get out already.
The woman yelled at me, and the police officer stood in front of me as if to shield me from her.
What's all this commotion about?
As I argued back and forth with the unhearing police, the landlord, having heard the noise, came over.
I heard from the neighbors that a lot of police had arrived, so I rushed over.
Annette, what happened?
It seems someone reported me for breaking and entering. Who did?
I think that lady over there. As I pointed, the landlord looked back to see the woman, who seemed on the verge of tears, and a man who appeared to be her acquaintance, glaring at us.
Just take them away already. My wife is terrified, can't you see?
No, you two need to leave.
What are you doing in someone else's house?
And who might you be?
I'm the landlord of this rental property. Annette here is the daughter of a family that has been renting this house since her grandfather's time.
With the landlord's arrival, the situation became even more chaotic, but as the police officers looked perplexed and at a loss.
Annette, can you bring the lease agreement or something?
They asked, and I brought the documents from the living room to show the police officers. After verifying the documents, the police turned their attention from me to the women.
Could you come with us to the station, please?
And they took them away. The landlord then said,
You owe Annette an apology.
And one of the police officers, albeit reluctantly, apologized to me. Concerned for me.
You were trying to rest.
You have work tomorrow, right?
Let me take care of things here. Why don't you rest up?
The landlord suggested.
Actually, my stretch of hard work has ended. I've taken tomorrow off as well.
Oh, is that so? Well done. Have you eaten yet?
We're having a barbecue at my place today, come join us.
The landlord's kind words meant a lot, and though I tried to maintain my composure, the sheer absurdity of the events made me not want to be alone, so I gratefully accepted the invitation. The ones who had reported me as a trespasser were a couple living in the next town over, known for their poor behavior, which, as it turns out, was quite infamous. The landlord thought she recognized the face and recalled it while being treated to steak. Sharing that the husband of the couple has some distant relative who's a politician or something. And despite their bad behavior, things seem to get smoothed over because of it. For now, I have to go to the police station tomorrow for questioning, so I need to report this to my work. I was actually told to come to the station today because of yesterday's incident. But recalling the attitude of the police officer from yesterday made me irritated, and I didn't want to waste my day off on that, so
I absolutely cannot make it today.
I refused and managed to have it postponed to tomorrow. It seems that while I was away due to my heavy workload, that couple had started living in our house. As they were being taken away, the woman yelled,
Why do we have to leave our own house?
And seeing this, a neighbor approached me.
Wasn't that person an acquaintance of yours?
Upon further inquiry, It turns out the couple had been claiming to be friends of mine, saying after the husband's company went bankrupt and they lost their home, they decided to parasite in mine for a while. If I had told the landlord about this, the neighbor said, shaking. Well, the misunderstanding has been cleared up. I laughed off, to which I was told,
It's not just a misunderstanding, they were a pair. You're lucky to be safe, Annette.
I then realized how dangerous the situation had been. Anyways, I'll go to the police station tomorrow to complete various procedures. The couple who reported me as a trespasser, Anselm and Mila, were a notoriously ill-behaved pair from the next town over. Financially strained due to debts and had been wandering after losing their place to live. Finding our house conveniently empty for long hours, they broke a window to enter. When I returned home, they had apparently been hiding to avoid running into me. Since I was staying overnight at work and only home for minutes at a time after the move, I didn't notice things like furniture being moved. I didn't even feel that sense of wrongness. In the end, they were only fined, quickly released due to being first-time offenders. Probably the distant relative who's a politician played a part in this. I was quite worried. They might come after me, bearing a grudge. Although the neighbors were aware of the incident and it prevented them from attacking our house. About a month and a half after the incident, the couple showed up at my workplace.
There's someone named Annette here, right? Bring her out now.
Anselm entered the company, shouting loudly, with Mila standing beside him, smirking creepily. The moment I heard his voice, the day's events flashed back, making me tremble and instinctively hide under my desk. Seeing my reaction, my boss approached Anselm. "Excuse me, who are you?"
I was usurped of my home by that woman, Annette. After all the trouble we've been through, she needs to take responsibility.
Annette is currently out. I will pass on your visit to her.
Call her back now.
I'm afraid that's not possible. Please leave for today and set an official appointment to come back.
What, you think this is a joke? How dare you waste our precious time?
If you continue to cause a disturbance, we will call the police.
Go ahead, call them.
While my boss remained calm, Anselm retorted vehemently, leading to Anselm and Mila being led to the reception room and watched over by a male employee, while I was moved to another room to give a statement to my boss. Since I had taken the day off to go to the police station, where I had already mentioned this issue. "I can't believe that happened to you," was the general reaction, offering me words of consolation. As we were dealing with this, the police arrived, someone having called them.
Do you know who my relatives are?
Anselm provoked the arriving officers by saying so.
It doesn't matter who your relatives are.
Let's go.
What? Are you kidding me? You think you can get away with this? Do you even understand what you're doing? Wait a minute. We were lied to and our house was taken over by an employee here named Annette, right? If anyone should be caught, it's her.
These individuals previously trespassed into the home of one of our employees, Annette, and were arrested. We have confirmed with Annette herself, so there is no mistake.
Just as I thought, Annette is here, isn't she? Bring her out.
As I mentioned before, I was in another room, but since the company isn't that large, I could clearly hear Anselm and Mila raising their voices in excitement. And I could faintly hear the voices of my boss and the police officers. I was about to come out so as not to cause any trouble, but boss told you to stay here, and if Annette comes out, it might excite them more and cause trouble, so just stay put. A colleague advised me, so I stayed back. Then the two were taken away again, and a police officer came to the room I was waiting in. "I've heard a brief explanation from your boss, but..." The police from before were from the area where my home is, but this time it was from the area where my company is located. And it seemed they were unaware of Anselm's distant relative, who is a politician. I had the police come over before, but they didn't handle it very well. That's unfortunate. We will conduct a thorough investigation and take appropriate action. There are a few points I'm concerned about. I began and shared certain details. Thank you for your cooperation. After listening to my points, the officer apologized deeply and left. The point of concern I mentioned included, firstly, how conveniently they found a house that was vacant for long hours, as indicated earlier. In fact, in the area where I live, there had been frequent incidents recently, such as plant pots in gardens being broken or flyers from businesses asking to buy unwanted items being stuck to fences. And there was a flyer near my door that I didn't know when it had been placed. Putting it all together, it becomes clear why Anselm and his partner chose my home. It seems they were observing how quickly the plant pots in the front yard were cleaned up, or how fast flyers stuck at the entrance were removed. Another point was that the two had entered through a window next to the back door of my house, which had been broken. The broken window glass had duct tape on it, and the break was near the lock. Breaking the glass with duct tape applied doesn't make noise when it breaks. I remembered this method from a TV show, and I realized it was the work of someone experienced. Just don't misuse this information, okay? Later, it was discovered that Anselm and Mila had been committing burglaries in the neighboring town and had been getting off lightly or not being charged at all, thanks to police officers who were acquaintances of the politician. However, the police this time acted without regard to the politician and properly prosecuted them, resulting in Anselm and Mila being sentenced to prison for trespassing, theft, and property damage. This included cases that were uncovered after I encouraged neighbors who noticed the damage to report to the police. There were also many other crimes they were found guilty of. Of course, the police officers who had overlooked Anselm and Mila's actions were also investigated and punished. As for the politician, he came to apologize to me in person. I am deeply sorry for the inconvenience my relative has caused, said the elderly man who was Anselm's distant relative and a politician, but upon further conversation, it turned out that he was somewhat of a victim as well. Though he said he was acquainted with the politician, in reality, he had almost no actual connection with Anselm, who was a very distant relative and had no direct involvement. However, Anselm continued to act arrogantly using the politician's name, and the involved police officers voluntarily overlooked any issues related to Anselm. The politician was unaware his name was being used in such a manner and has been apologizing to all involved parties. It seems the politician is a person with a good reputation, but he mentioned he might resign. And as for the compensation he offered me, I refused to accept it. After all, the politician wasn't responsible. And I found myself thinking it would be okay if the money came from Anselm and his partner. I'll probably never handle such a large amount of money again. But accepting that money felt like forgiving Anselm and his partner for their actions, so I ended up saying, Anselm and his partner should atone for their crimes themselves, trying to sound principled. Then, please allow at least for the expenses for the repairs of your house. The politician insisted, and since I wanted the repairs done quickly, I accepted that money only. I still occasionally regret it, but for things like compensation for trouble caused or damages, I made sure to hire a lawyer and demand payment from Anselm and Mila. Of course, they are behind bars, so their parents ended up paying on their behalf, but I'll make them repay it themselves. I also made sure they wrote a pledge. What actually happens remains to be seen, but for now, my story seems to have come to a tentative conclusion, doesn't it? After hearing this story, my parents considered moving back. But with contributions from the landlord and the money received from Anselm's parents, we changed the locks and hired a security company to enhance the security. So, I plan to continue living alone in this house for now. From now on, this car belongs to me and her. Despite being caught cheating, husband Andy spoke with pride. It was utterly baffling to see him like that. How could he be so cheerful, act so superior towards me? It felt like we were living in completely different worlds. But if he's happy to take the car, I couldn't be happier. The monthly loan is $3,000, though. He'll figure something out. Okay. I wonder if he's okay with the $3,000 loan. When I accepted Andy's request with a nod, he started smiling in a way I had never seen before. My name is Samantha. I'm 38 and work at a design company. I thought I was living a happy life without any particular worries in my job or personal life. But occasionally, I find myself pondering one thing. When will I ever get married? At nearly 40, I don't even have a boyfriend, let alone married. My dating experience is limited. Before I knew it, all my friends were married, leaving me feeling left behind. There were times I thought about giving up on marriage, but seeing my friends happy made me dream about it again. My life changed significantly one day after work. Feeling good, I decided to go for a drink alone at a pub. Entering a bar, I noticed, I ordered some drinks and appetizers. While waiting and looking at my phone, I noticed a man approaching me. "Lady, are you alone?" A man came over and peered at my face. This was the beginning of my encounter with Andy, who would later become my husband. "Well, yes, I'm alone."
Really? Then let's drink together. Shall we?
Without waiting for my response, he sat down in front of me and tilted his glass. "Wait a minute."
Come on, it'll be just for a bit.
Just for a bit, then. With that thought, I accepted him. But I didn't have the energy to talk to anyone else at that day. As I looked down, he started talking on his own. Eventually, we exchanged numbers and parted ways. I thought our relationship was over, but 2 months after we first met, I and Andy had become close, meeting frequently. As we exchanged contacts, I found myself gradually drawn to him. Talking to him, my feelings would calm without notice. I sincerely wanted to talk more. When he said he wanted to see me, I genuinely felt happy. Surprisingly, I never imagined I could harbor such feelings, leaving me astonished. And then, about 6 months after we first met, we became a couple. After 3 years of dating, we got married. I never thought I could get married, so when he proposed, it felt like a dream. But I realized it was the peak of happiness only after everything ended. After marriage, he changed drastically. It made me wonder if his personality during our dating was a lie. About a month into our life together, he suddenly became distant. No matter what I asked, whether he would be late coming home, or what he wanted for dinner, he would just respond with, yeah. A disinterested reply. "Hey, what's wrong lately? You seem down. Leave me alone. It's none of your business." I wondered if he had come to dislike me. Seeing his attitude worsen day by day, my anxiety grew. Still, I was happy he came home. He would eat the dinner I made, and we still shared a bedroom. Somewhere in my mind, I believed he still had feelings for me. Maybe his current cold and harsh attitude was because he was tired. That's what I thought. However, a month into our diverging lives, the reasons of overtime and drinking parties made he come home late increasingly, and I found myself spending more time alone at home. I wasn't alone from morning to evening due to work, but coming home to no one was indescribably empty. "Alone again today." Looking at his messages, he said he had overtime again today. I was still thankful for the messages, but the increase in overtime and drinking parties right after getting married bothered me. Maybe I did something wrong. Disillusioned, perhaps he intentionally started avoiding coming home. I quietly placed the shopping bag down as I received a message from him. Gradually, he stopped coming home daily. We rented the slightly expensive rental property to start our new life together. Since he stopped coming home, it had become a place where I spent my time alone, feeling lonely. We were supposed to be married, so why did it come to this? As I thought about him, I continued to eat dinner alone. Andy, when he occasionally came home, was always in a bad mood. "Dinner's ready, you'll eat, right? I'll start making it now." I prepared dinner as usual and served it to him. However, after tasting a bite of the side dish, he stopped eating. "What's wrong? Not hungry?" "I've thought this before, but the food you make is really terrible." I was stunned by the words said to me for the first time. Until now, he had said it was delicious and had seconds many times. He used to say that he wanted to eat my dishes rather than fine dining restaurants, even a special day like an anniversary. But why suddenly? Sorry. I didn't know it was bad. I'll clean it up. Don't touch it." He glared at me sharply and started eating again. But he didn't look like he was enjoying it. His face always crumpled. He started to complain about the cleaning and laundry I did. The coffee cups weren't aligned, a picture hanging was tilted. Even a single hair on the floor was enough for him to complain. I work too, so some imperfections should be expected. I began to wonder if it's normal to fuss over such minor things. Of course, I've mentioned several times that I can't do housework perfectly because of work. But he wouldn't budge. In the end, it always concluded, "Just shut up and do as I say." With him yelling. Sigh. The stress piled up each time I interacted with him. I started to doubt whether marrying him was the right decision. Various emotions swirled, and I even considered divorce. But the fact that I got married at this age, and thinking about the hassle of divorce proceedings, I couldn't bring myself to act. I thought I just had to endure it. Such thoughts had developed over time. But before we got married, I made a significant purchase. It was a luxury car from a well-known brand. Of course, I couldn't pay in full, so I took out a loan. I wasn't particularly into cars, but there was one model I had always dreamed of. I was happy to have it as an adult, and it motivated me at work. I drove it to work and received compliments from car-loving colleagues. Initially, Andy praised the car. "That's amazing. Good for you." That's what he said. But as his attitude changed, he began using the car without asking. It was inconvenient because I needed the car for work and shopping. It would have been acceptable if he didn't have a car, but he did. Yet, he preferred mine, which bothered me. Because of this, I had to use the bus for work and walk for shopping. I've addressed this issue with him. "Hey, could you stop using my car without asking? I need it too." "Come on, it doesn't matter." "It does matter to me." "Well, I don't care about you. You're managing with the bus, right? That's fine. I have reasons to use a car. Don't butt in. Even though you have your own car? Your car is better. Just let me do it." He never listened and would end the conversation unilaterally. The bus fare added up, and walking home from the bus stop was exhausting after a long day at work. Shopping became more frequent since I couldn't carry heavy bags without the car, going from once a week to every other day. I considered borrowing his car. I asked, knowing it was a long shot. "That car is mine. There's no way you could handle it. Keep your jokes to a limit." I thought having two cars was unnecessary, but held back from saying anything to avoid angering him. But I couldn't just use it without permission. Slight change in the car's parking spot, seat, or steering wheel position would surely infuriate him. That's how he is, so it would be troublesome either way. If I were younger, I might have argued. But I no longer have the energy for that. Andy continued to not come home. He claimed he wasn't drinking because he was driving, but I noticed the scent of a perfume I didn't recognize. It wasn't long before I started suspecting he was having an affair. I had a hunch since the increase in his overtime and drinking outings. But I had neither solid evidence nor the money to hire a detective. I silently acknowledged his infidelity. He probably thinks I'm too dumb to notice his infidelity, believing he can do whatever because I'll just go along with anything. That must be what he's thinking. The marriage I had imagined was far too different from reality. I dreamed of a warmer, kinder relationship where we cared for each other, going on little trips on weekends, enjoying tourist spots. I dreamed of such a family. I thought I could achieve that with Andy, but it was impossible. It feels like this will be my life forever. I sighed and began preparing dinner for one. But then, one day, something happened that changed everything. It was on a day I came home late from overtime. I usually let Andy know when I'll be working late. I did that day too, but I finished earlier than expected and came home. No reply from him. Probably, he wouldn't be home again today. Feeling down, I walked home, but something was different when I arrived. My car was there. Usually, he used to use my car, so only his car was supposed to be parked. It was unusual. Thinking this, I went to enter the house. But then I saw it. The car was slightly shaking. I should have just been inside the house, but I approached the car out of curiosity. I could hear voices inside. Andy and a woman's voice. I moved closer to hear the conversation. "Do you love me, Belle?"
Yes. I do.
The woman's name seemed to be Belle. Listening in, I heard a conversation I had expected but wished not to hear. "I want a divorce soon. I want to marry Belle."
I'm happy. How have things been with your wife lately?
"We don't talk. I don't want to. Why did I even marry her? I'm always with Belle, so there's no real conversation, right?"
That makes sense.
I felt ridiculed. My heart ached, and I felt indescribably sad. I didn't want to hear any more. I quietly stood up and was about to enter the house when my bag hit the car and made a noise. Too late, I realized my mistake. Andy peeked out from the driver's seat, seeing me.
Ah. You. Why are you here? You let your wife hear this. This is the worst.
Andy got out and confronted me.
You said you had overtime today, right? Why are you back so early? Overtime means later, right? Did you lie to me?
I didn't lie. I really had overtime. But it seems like, whenever I say I have overtime, you do this? I hoped he would falter at my accusation, but having been caught with Belle, he seemed resigned.
Yeah. So what? Is it so bad?
It is bad. We're married, you know. What you're doing is cheating. And, how dare you use my car to see another woman?
So what? I'm using it now.
Andy showed no remorse. Then he said something astonishing.
This car is now ours.
I was speechless. My saying my car probably prompted his bold statement. But then, something inside me broke. I'd gladly hand over the car, including its loan. Okay, the loan is $3,000 a month though, hope that's okay. I was paying a $3,000 monthly loan. It was a bit of a stretch, but I thought I could manage with my current income. Paying the loan for the car which he was using seemed absurd. But you'll have to pay the loan.
What? Why? You keep paying it.
Why don't you want to pay? Can't afford it? With your own car and rent, you can't, can you? Provoking him, he became even angrier.
What do you mean I can't afford it? Fine, I'll pay.
He was probably underestimating the amount because I had been paying it. Later, I transferred the loan and ownership of the car to Andy. During the loan process, I was handed a document detailing the loan by the agent, but there was no particular surprise at the amount mentioned. Whether Andy could really afford the $3,000 or had not thoroughly reviewed the document was unclear. He seemed solely focused on finishing the procedure quickly. After the procedure was completed, the process moved on to divorce. This time, due to infidelity, I hired the lawyer and chose a collaborative divorce. I told the lawyer about submitting the dashcam footage from the day the affair was discovered, seeking divorce and compensation. The lawyer gladly took on the case, and after weeks of preparation, the day to settle things with Andy finally arrived. Andy was visibly angry, and Belle was sitting next to him, looking defiant. Despite being told multiple times that hiring a lawyer was overkill, I couldn't disagree more. As the discussion progressed, it was revealed how they met and who Belle was in the first place. Apparently, she is the daughter of an executive at the company where Andy works. She also worked in the same company, same department, and they were acquainted. Of course, Andy knew she was the executive's daughter when they became involved. While he was at fault for initiating, she, knowing he was married and still engaging, was also to blame. I demanded a divorce and compensation from Andy. He said, perhaps out of stubbornness.
Compensation. Divorce. Do as you like. I can pay whatever compensation you want.
However, Belle seemed desperate not to have Andy pay the compensation.
If you pays the compensation, it'll reduce the money I can spend.
What a way of thinking. It seemed she was planning to marry Andy after our divorce.
Are you okay with your family and company finding out about this? Huh? Do whatever you want.
Belle must think my words are merely a threat. Well, if she says to do as I please, then so be it. Since Andy and I both intended to divorce, it was finalized that day. Andy agreed to pay the compensation, and we dissolved the marriage. Of course, Andy and Belle's relationship was later exposed to her company. After the divorce, I moved to a house near my workplace and continued to live comfortably. No need to accommodate anyone. No need to worry about the car loan. What a wonderful life. I wonder if I could have continued this lifestyle if I hadn't been married. I must admit, I've regretted it at times. Perhaps because I now have more financial freedom, coworkers have mentioned that I look healthier. I plan to live quietly on my own, with the compensation and my income. I won't marry again. From now on, I will live a life of my own. That's what I've decided. However, about 3 months after the divorce, suddenly, I received a call from Andy. What could he possibly want now? Though I found it annoying, I answered the phone. Hello, yes?
Hey! It's not hello! What's going on? What's this about a red envelope?
A red envelope? Perhaps it was a reminder or a demand notice. Calm down. What do you want?
Like I said, what's this about the red envelope? When I opened it, it said I need to pay for the car loan. And, wait, were you paying $3,000 a month? I didn't know about that.
Not know? I should have mentioned the amount when we transferred the loan and ownership. It's strange you didn't know. What? You didn't look at the amount because I was paying it effortlessly?
You can't expect me to have thought it was $3,000. Hey! Can't you change it back so you're paying it now?
Such a convenient man. After all, Andy would be the one using the car, even if I paid for it. And now that we're divorced, I shouldn't have to listen to him. It's impossible. Remember, you were the one who started saying the car was yours in the first place? Do you really think you can come now and demand I pay for the car, expecting it to be that easy?
Don't say that. We were married, right? Even though we're divorced, we were in love, weren't we? Can't you help me out when I'm in trouble?
In love. Help out in trouble. What is he talking about? I understand we were married, hence in love. But I've been through a lot because of Andy. And now, asking for help just because he's in trouble is too convenient. You. After living however you wanted, coming to me, now a stranger since we're divorced, for help is too convenient, isn't it? Now that the reminder has arrived, you'd better figure out how to pay it soon.
Figure it out. That's impossible.
No, don't start with that now. You were the one who said you'd pay my car loan in a fit of bravado, remember? Maybe you should learn to take responsibility for your words? That's that. Hey! Andy was making a fuss on the other end, but I had nothing more to say to him. I hung up without a second thought, ignoring him. The phone rang about 10 more times after that, but of course, I didn't answer. After leaving my phone aside, he seemed to give up as it eventually stopped ringing, with no further calls thereafter. Half a year later, I was still living comfortably by myself. Thanks to moving closer to work, the commute was incredibly easy. Having more personal time and finding a new hobby of going to art galleries was a joy. On such a pleasant day off, relaxing on the sofa, my mobile phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, Andy's name was displayed. Why was he calling again, I wondered. Tentatively, I answered the phone, and he began speaking in a tone as if his previous bravado was a lie. Samantha. It's me. Andy. What's going on? Despite his apparent weakness, I couldn't coddle him. I asked what he wanted with a tone of detachment. The compensation. I can't pay it anymore. Please, give me a break. Excuse me? Give you a break? His plea irritated me, but I was curious about what had happened, so I listened. Apparently, he had been hiding it out of pride, but after our divorce, he had to leave his job. The reason was his indecent act with Belle, the executive's daughter. It seems he was pushed to resign voluntarily for disrupting the company's order. Belle had dumped him as well. Even though he tried to find a new job, he struggled, surviving on part-time jobs. However, that kind of life didn't last long. Now he has sold both cars and moved out of his rental, returning to his parents' home. He probably thought this would make his life a bit easier. However, a few weeks after moving back home, his mother's health deteriorated, requiring care. With his father being elderly, Andy had no choice but to take on the caregiving duties while also working. Moreover, just because he sold the cars doesn't mean he's free from paying for them. The luxury car loans, the compensation to me. Andy is evidently struggling. Come on, please. I'm begging you. Heck, I'd even consider getting back together if it'd make things easier for you. What do you say? Where exactly would I find it easier? Without much thought, getting back with Andy now would mean taking on the responsibilities of his parents' care, the loan payments, and other living expenses. He would likely quit his job and leave all the housework to me, as before. Life was hard enough when we were together. Jumping back into an even more difficult situation is unthinkable. I've said something similar before, but you truly only think about yourself. You probably just want to live in my house and have an easy life, right? That's not it. I can't believe that. Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused me? Caring for parents is tough, you say? Forced to quit your job? Dumped by your girlfriend? All of that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't cheated, right? Andy fell silent. But I continued to press him. I wonder why I ever married someone like you. I'd be angry with my past self if I could. Don't marry Andy, you won't be happy, and you're still talking about getting back together? That's a bit crazy. If you were truly remorseful, such words wouldn't come to you. So, I expect you to continue paying the compensation. That's... Please. Begging someone you once looked down on must be humiliating. No matter how much you beg, I won't listen. So, don't contact me ever again. Hey! Samantha! I hung up the phone. After that, Andy seemed to have given up, as I received no further contact from him. No messages, nothing. The desperation was clear from that call, but listening to his condescending tone, I wondered if he still thought he wasn't at fault, pondering why this was happening to him. Well, the compensation has continued to be deposited after that last call, so he must be managing somehow. Half a year after Andy's last attempt to contact me, I continue to live a comfortable life on my own. I've kept up with my new hobby of visiting art museums. My room is now filled with art books and postcards purchased from museum shops. Lately, I've been thinking about visiting art museums abroad. There's a lot I ponder about married life, and even if I were to be reborn, I doubt I'd want to marry. Honestly, I see no good in getting married. For now, I'm just thankful for this comfortable life I can enjoy on my own. A wife who neglects her housework is not needed in this house, right? Such a useless woman does not deserve to be my son's wife.
Leave this house!
Chloe, my mother-in-law, said this to me, and with a smile, I replied, "Understood." I left the house and went back to my parents' home. Probably Chloe will storm into my parents' home. I don't know what will happen to me from now on. I am Sophia, a 25-year-old housewife. I married Timothy last year and have been living a smooth life. Except for one thing, Chloe's presence makes our newlywed life less peaceful. Chloe is a son-obsessed, clingy mother. Especially since Timothy is an only child. We live at a medium distance and meet only a few times a year. Whenever I see Chloe, she annoyingly checks whether I am taking good care of Timothy. Last time we met, "You're taking care of Timothy properly, right? Listen, Timothy loves meat and hates fish. You remember that, right? I remember you said during our first meeting that your favorite dish to cook is fish stew. If you're serving Timothy the same thing, I won't let it slide," she said. Chloe seems desperate to make sure I am doing my household duties and making meals that Timothy enjoys. Timothy loves the fish stew I make, and we have never had any trouble with meals. I can let it go, but she looked at my clothes, saying, "You're dressed so inappropriately. When standing beside Timothy, you should dress to match him. A short skirt? How vulgar. Are you trying to tempt other men?" I was utterly baffled. My skirt was knee-length and quite modest. Timothy has a simple style, and my outfit that day matched his. It seemed Chloe didn't want me to outshine Timothy. "When you two are together, everyone's eyes go to Sophia. It's because of the bright colors of your clothes. From now on, wear a white shirt and black pants. Don't wear anything else." Chloe, beaming as if she had a great idea, got a wry smile from me. Thankfully, Timothy stood up for me. "What are you talking about, Mom? I think Sophia is cute no matter what she wears, and she should wear what she likes. Stop hassling her with your weird demands." Saying. Chloe often comes up with these nonsensical requests. On the other hand, my father-in-law is harmless but doesn't contribute positively either. He always seems preoccupied, either reading the newspaper or watching news on TV, never joining in our conversations. He turned a blind eye to whatever Chloe said to me, right in front of him. I've tried to talk to him several times since getting married. But because he shows no interest in chatting, the conversation dies down quickly. Honestly, visiting my in-laws has always been a burdensome event for me. Then one day, I started feeling unwell and couldn't manage the household chores. I thought my headache and slight fever would pass, but Timothy was worried and decided we should visit a doctor the next day. It was a Saturday, and Timothy had the day off. Our usual clinic was only open in the morning on Saturdays. The doctor asked if I could be pregnant, and I remembered my period was late. "Maybe I am pregnant," I said, and took a pregnancy test right there. The result was positive. We immediately visited a nearby gynecologist, and it was confirmed I was pregnant. Timothy and I were overjoyed. Especially Timothy, with tears streaming down his face. "Sophia, thank you." He kept thanking me over and over again. But when we reported the pregnancy to our parents, Chloe showed up at our house carrying a huge bag. I was suffering from severe morning sickness and was holed up in the bathroom, unable to come out. As the doorbell was repeatedly rung, I hurried out of the bathroom to answer it, and there was Chloe. "Chloe? You were trying to pretend you weren't home, weren't you?" "No, I was just in the bathroom." "I don't care, just let me in." I staggered to the door and opened it. Chloe was holding a large Boston bag, and I had a bad feeling. "We're going to live together until the baby grows up." I was stunned by Chloe's sudden words. I couldn't just leave her at the entrance, so I let her into the house. "I'll make some coffee." I said and headed to the kitchen and called Timothy while waiting for the water to boil. It was a weekday afternoon, and Timothy was at work as usual. I was worried if he would answer, but he did after a few rings. Sophia? Is something wrong?
Hey, Chloe came over. She's carrying a big bag. Do you know anything?
Eh? I haven't heard anything. But she said she would come by soon. I never thought she'd come when I'm not home.
I see. I'll ask Chloe for the details.
Sorry. If Mom says something weird, you can kick her out. Oh, sorry, I have to hang up. Timothy seemed busy and hung up.
As if I can just kick her out because she says something weird. He really doesn't get it.
I sighed a little. Timothy is generally kind and cherishes me, but he doesn't think through the consequences of prioritizing my wishes. I can imagine the uproar Chloe would make if I tried to kick her out. For now, I just prepared the coffee and served it to Chloe. Chloe, what brings you here today? Timothy is at work. He'll be home around 6 p.m. This doesn't look good. What? Confused by Chloe's sudden remark, I watched as she took a sip of the coffee I had prepared. Ah, young people are hopeless. They can't even make a decent cup of coffee. Poor Timothy, having to drink this. I'll teach you how to make coffee right now. Come here. I'm sorry, my morning sickness is quite bad. Could we do this some other time when I'm feeling better? It's just morning sickness. It's fine, you'll feel better if you eat something. Come on, hurry up. Then, for an hour, Chloe's coffee-making lesson began. As I started feeling nauseous, Chloe opened the cupboard on her own, took out a plate, and placed a piece of bread. Eat this. You'll feel better if you eat. The smell of the bread made me feel even sicker, and I ran to the bathroom. With a headache and nausea, my mind was a blur. For the 3 hours until Timothy came home, I was holed up in the bathroom. Chloe kept knocking on the door in front of the bathroom, but I didn't have the energy to respond. Around 6 p.m., Timothy came home. First, Timothy was surprised to see Chloe making a fuss in front of the bathroom. I had fallen asleep in the bathroom, and when I woke up, Chloe and Timothy were arguing outside. Why did you suddenly come? Sophia is suffering from morning sickness, don't be a nuisance. I came to supervise whether this girl is properly doing her housework as a housewife. I bet she's just using her morning sickness as an excuse to be lazy. I was shocked that she can't even make coffee properly. The coffee Sophia makes is delicious. And what's this supervision about? Sophia isn't someone who would use morning sickness as an excuse to slack off on housework. If she couldn't do it, maybe her morning sickness is really bad? Sophia, you were holed up in the bathroom for 3 hours. Timothy is so naive, he's easily deceived. I really need to be here to guide Sophia. I got married to make those around me happy. Even if Sophia were slacking off, I wouldn't mind. As long as she's doing what she wants and staying by my side, I don't want anything more. No need for guidance. Please go home. I smiled at Timothy's words. The symptoms of my morning sickness had subsided, so I opened the bathroom door. Welcome home, Timothy. Chloe, sorry for leaving you alone. You! How can you lock yourself in the bathroom when you have a guest? What kind of nerve do you have? Well, I couldn't show Chloe my messy state, so I locked myself in the bathroom. I'm truly sorry about that. Anyway, I've made dinner, so make sure you eat all of it. With that, Chloe said, and Timothy pointed to the entrance. No, Mom, please go home. No way. I've already told Dad that I'm staying here. I don't trust young people. See, she didn't even prepare dinner because she was holed up in the bathroom with morning sickness. I'm definitely not going back. Chloe stubbornly refused to move. Forcing her out would not satisfy Chloe, so I decided to allow her to stay. Then, maybe you can stay for a while. But I knew Timothy was worried about me, but kicking her out now would only create more trouble later. I smiled at Timothy to reassure him. It's okay. After that, Chloe tried to force me to eat chicken. Lately, I've been mainly eating vegetables and fruits. With severe morning sickness, even the sight of fried food, let alone bread, made me feel sick. Chloe complained about this too, but Timothy was completely on my side, which was a great help. The next day, worried about leaving me alone with Chloe.
Call me if anything happens. It's okay to lock yourself in the bathroom,
Timothy said to me before going to work. As expected, Chloe complained about everything I did. If I cleaned, she complained I was too slow. If I did laundry, she said I should care more for Timothy's clothes than mine. Each time, "All right," I just responded. When morning sickness hit and I rushed to the bathroom, Chloe would knock on the door. When I came out,
"Keep bathroom visits under 5 minutes,"
she said. Chloe did nothing but complain, while I struggled with housework in the midst of severe morning sickness. I knew this would happen when I allowed Chloe to stay, but honestly, I wanted her to go back to the in-laws' house soon. I did as much as Chloe said as I could without overexerting myself. Timothy, except for one day when he was late due to a company drinking party, came home early without overtime, and there didn't seem to be any major problems. After about 5 days of living like this, Chloe finally said something to me. That day, my morning sickness was particularly bad, and in the middle of cleaning, I left the vacuum cleaner and rushed to the bathroom, unable to come out for many minutes. Then Chloe stood in front of the bathroom and began to yell.
"Hey you! Weren't you in the middle of cleaning? Are you expecting me to do it? Enough is enough! Claiming to have severe morning sickness, are you just slacking off? Thinking you can just hide in the bathroom?"
I didn't have the energy to respond to Chloe, but she kept complaining endlessly. The symptoms of my morning sickness had subsided, but I didn't feel like facing the continually fussing Chloe, so I just sat on the toilet seat waiting for Chloe to calm down. As I was sighing, wondering whether to call Timothy. A wife who neglects her housework is not needed in this house, right? Such a useless woman does not deserve to be my son's wife. "Leave this house," Chloe suddenly said. I immediately came out of the bathroom and understood. I replied with a broad smile and went straight to my room. Chloe followed me, looking puzzled, but I locked the door to my room, making sure she couldn't enter. Then, I packed a travel bag with some clothes and valuables that I had stored in my closet. Knowing Chloe would try to stop me if I left now, I waited until she left the front of my room. Chloe kept knocking on my room's door, but after waiting for about 2 hours, she finally left. I heard a door close in the distance, probably her going to the bathroom. I grabbed my bag and immediately left the house, getting a taxi to my parents' home. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mom, who was a housewife and at home, was very surprised. My dad wasn't at work, so I explained the situation to my mom first.
"I understand that Chloe loves her son and doesn't think highly of me. But still, it's annoying to be complained at up close."
My mom didn't get particularly angry, but just gave a wry smile. "Well, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict is common everywhere. It might be good for you to stay home for a while. Chloe seems like she can look after Timothy. You think so? Aren't you going to get mad about what she's doing to your daughter? Well, Sophia, you must be up to something, right?" My mom seemed to see right through everything. Then, I contacted Timothy and told him I would stay at my parents' house until Chloe went back home. Timothy also felt it was safer that way, and I relaxed at my parents' house for the first time in a long time. The next day, as expected, Chloe came to my parents' house. When I opened the door and showed my face, Chloe turned red and started making a fuss. "Why are you back at your parents' house? Hurry back and make Timothy's dinner. It's a failure as a wife to go to such lengths to avoid housework." But I replied with a smile. "Eh? I just did what you told me to, right? You said to leave, didn't you? Are you saying I should have slept outside instead of going back to my parents' house? What's with this girl? So irritating. I didn't really mean for you to leave. I'm just saying you should do your housework properly. I was doing my housework as you told me to. I don't understand why I have to do it quickly, but the quality of my housework doesn't change just because I went to the bathroom in the middle." Then Chloe's eyes narrowed in anger. "Don't talk nonsense.
When I was pregnant, I didn't go to the bathroom so much. Eating makes the nausea go away. Despite that, you don't listen."
Then, from behind me, Mom came. With a troubled look, Mom gently spoke to Chloe.
"Chloe, you had a different symptom, didn't you? My daughter has different symptoms. She's a different person, so it's natural for her morning sickness symptoms to be different. Please don't assume she's the same just because you experienced it." "What are you saying? Children should listen to their parents."
At that, Chloe seemed taken aback for a moment, and I smiled.
"Huh. I see. So Chloe, you just wanted to manipulate me to do as you wish? No one will act exactly as you want them to. That includes Stephen as well."
Confused by my words, Chloe tilted her head.
"Stephen? Your husband. You're so busy meddling in your son's household that you've completely forgotten about your own. Perhaps it's time you return to your own home?"
Then Chloe started making a phone call. Probably to her husband's number. But the call didn't connect, it seemed like she was blocked, and in a panic, Chloe rushed back home. Later, I heard from Timothy that when Chloe returned to the in-laws' house, there was only a divorce application stamped by her husband and a note with a single line on the table. The note apparently said that he would take all the retirement pay as the distribution of property, and everything else would be left to her. Chloe tried contacting her husband at his workplace, but he had already retired, and his whereabouts became unknown. But in reality, he hasn't retired from his job yet. He was staying for a month for handover and had asked the company to tell Chloe that he had retired if she called. Actually, Timothy and I knew where he was. He was staying in a business hotel and planning to live with a relative in a distant region after retirement. We were supposed to inform him when Chloe filed for divorce, and he said he wanted to start a new life then. About a week ago, when Chloe came to my house and it got late, I called him.
"Chloe is at our house. Are you okay, Stephen? Aren't you lonely by yourself?"
When I asked him kindly, Raphael, who usually hardly spoke, opened up about his true feelings. Maybe because it was over the phone and not face-to-face, he could speak without stress.
"Sophia, you're the only one who worries about someone like me. My wife has always treated me like an ATM, never as a husband. When Timothy was young, if I tried to play with him, she'd say, 'Don't touch him, you're dirty, stay away.' Maybe that's why Timothy became unsure how to interact with me. I've always been timid and lived a rather dull life under my wife's thumb. You're right, I've always been lonely."
At that moment, I thought I could use Raphael to drive Chloe away. There would still be interactions with Chloe in the future. If I forced her out now, I could be endlessly complained at. In the worst case, if Chloe persuaded Raphael to leave their house and said they had nowhere to go, they might both end up at our house, making it difficult for us to refuse. I discussed it with Timothy, and he had been aware since he was young that his parents were a sham couple and wanted to do something about it. I had Timothy pretend to be working overtime and visit the in-laws' house to have a heart-to-heart talk with Raphael. Raphael then confessed to Timothy that he wanted a divorce from Chloe. So, we decided to have Raphael proceed with the preparations for the divorce. I had been waiting for the right moment when Chloe would seriously listen to me. I thought she might calm down a bit in a place away from her own territory, like my parents' house, and thankfully, it worked better than expected. Faced with her own issues, Chloe quickly returned to the in-laws' house, so I decided to go back to my house too. Timothy and I then persuaded Chloe. We carefully explained to her how she had been making Raphael suffer, that Raphael wanted to be free, and that if she continued to be difficult, Raphael was prepared to take the matter to court. We warned her that if it came to a court case, both Timothy and I would side with Raphael. Finally, Chloe stamped the divorce papers and submitted them to the office. After that, Chloe ended up living alone in the in-laws' house. She seemed lonely and wanted to live in our house, but Timothy firmly refused.
"If you come here, Sophia will go back to her parents' house. If that happens, I'll never consider you as my mother again. Just like you ignored Dad, I'll ignore you as if you didn't exist."
With Timothy's firm statement, Chloe, dejected, went back to the in-laws' house. I feel fortunate to have such a reliable husband. As for Raphael, as soon as Timothy informed him about the finalized divorce, he immediately moved out of the relative's house and into a small apartment. He got a job in the same field as before his retirement. Though his income dropped a bit, he's more relaxed than when he lived with Chloe and now happily immerses himself in his hobbies every day. Later, I safely gave birth to a baby. A healthy girl. When I'm in trouble, my mom helps as much as possible, and Chloe is only allowed to meet my daughter when I permit it. Thanks to this, I'm managing to raise my child without stress. I believe that, though there will be challenges ahead, as long as I'm with Timothy, who cares deeply for me, we can overcome anything. Stop leeching off me, you useless thing. For over 20 years, I believed I had devoted myself to my husband, Thomas. Yet, this is what Thomas really thought of me. I wasn't leeching off him. I was merely devoted to him. But I can't put these thoughts into words. As my strength drains away, Thomas continues. Now that Richard is a working adult, you've got no reason to leech off me, right? But... quiet. I don't want to hear your excuses. Thomas raises his voice. Oh, I can't do this anymore. My feelings will never reach him. At that moment, I hear something snap inside me. It's the sound of the thread of love that connected our hearts, breaking. At the same time, my feelings for him begin to fade. We were husband and wife until just now, but now he feels like a stranger. He had been using me from the start. He never loved me. Otherwise, he wouldn't blatantly cheat and try to kick me out. I don't care what happens to such a man. No, I must bring him down thoroughly. With my mind made up, I lift my face and stare intently at him. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a 50-year-old housewife, married to Thomas for 25 years. Our son Richard, born a few years into our marriage, graduated from college and started working this year. Now my child-rearing days have come to an end, I can finally do what I want. That's what I'm thinking now. But there's one problem. It's my relationship with Thomas. He is neither a good husband nor a good father. In fact, it's hard to find anything good about him. He cheats, and he doesn't properly contribute to the household expenses. Please, at least bring in enough for the living expenses. Huh? Don't get cocky when you're living off me. That's always his response. Maybe it's hopeless. Should I consider divorce? Lately, I've been thinking about it more and more. But I can't easily bring myself to mention divorce. The truth is, his father, Joseph, who is currently hospitalized and in poor health, entrusted Thomas to my care. I have to be grateful to Joseph and bear it as long as I can. His words can't be ignored. But the desire to divorce is strong. Caught between these conflicting emotions, I find myself reminiscing about happier times before our marriage. The trigger for that past happiness was a misfortune that befell my father, David. My family runs a small eatery. My father was in charge of cooking, and my mother served the customers. Needless to say, the food was delicious. But my father was incredibly bad at business. His dream was to feed delicious food to the customers. As many people as possible. A noble idea, I think. But that was the only thing he focused on in running the eatery. So he doesn't really think about profitability. Profit didn't matter as long as the customers were satisfied. That was his way of doing business. Obviously, it wasn't profitable. Consequently, our family finances were always tight. Nevertheless, as a child, I was proud to see the satisfied customers. So I never interfered with my father's business. However, during my college years, a crisis struck. The company supplying ingredients to our eatery went bankrupt due to unforeseen circumstances. We've already paid this month's bill. If this continues, we might have to close our restaurant. Our situation was already difficult. There was no extra money to spare. Seeing my parents so upset made me anxious, but as a college student, there wasn't much I could do. And it was unlikely that the bankrupt company could refund. Our only option seemed to be closing our eatery. That's when a regular customer of the eatery said, "Closing this eatery? It's too good for that. What a waste. But the company supplying us has gone bankrupt, and now we're in debt. Then let me help you personally, and you can revive the eatery with that." The regular, truly lending the money immediately to my father. "You've saved us. We'll definitely repay you. Don't worry about the money for now. Just keep making delicious meals." Saying that, the man left the shop. Afterward, my father started dealing with a larger food wholesaler, which offered ingredients at a cheaper rate. Fortune seemed to smile upon us, and our family's eatery was saved from bankruptcy. About a year later, I went with my father to return the money to that regular customer. While my father and the man talked, a young man approached me. "It seems you've borrowed money from my father." Listening to him, I learned that he was the son of the man who lent us money. His name is Thomas, and he works for his father's company. "You're beautiful. How about going out with me sometime?" "Me? Go out with you? Why not?" Think of it as a way to say thanks for the loan. It's true that we were helped by the loan, but my father had already properly thanked him. I don't feel obliged to go that far, but as I thought this, Thomas whispered to me, "The daughter of an eatery owner is ungrateful." I could spread that around, you know. But that's... I couldn't talk back. Even if he did spread rumors, I don't think it would harm me. But it could trouble my father. And what would the customers think? With these thoughts, I couldn't refuse his offer. I don't like it, but I'll tolerate it this once. With that thought, I went out with him. But it turned out to be more fun than I expected. He was interesting to talk to, and he knew lots of places to go. The restaurants he chose were all tastefully picked. Despite my initial bad impression, he might be a good person after all. Maybe it was wrong to think that way. I soon found myself being asked out by him. "I have fun when I'm with you." "I have fun too. It is my first time that I can think about marrying." "If that was to you who are serious and good girl." Swayed by his simple words, I started a relationship with him, considering marriage. After that, he continued to guide me in various ways. Eventually, a few years later, I found myself married to him. Of course, I never thought at the beginning of our marriage that it was all a trap by him. He seemed genuinely kind, and I felt loved by him. But it was all a lie. As soon as we got married, his attitude changed drastically. "Here, this is my salary for the month. Manage it well." I opened the envelope he handed me. It was a salary statement. The salary itself was transferred to the bank, so it wasn't strange to receive only the statement. What struck me as odd was that the statement was handwritten. Nowadays, it's almost unheard of. But when I got married, 25 years ago, it was a time when personal computers were just becoming widespread, so a handwritten statement wasn't out of place. "There's over $1,000, so it should be enough, right?" I murmured to myself, trying to be convinced. I managed our life with that small amount of money. As our marriage continued, I gradually felt something was off. It was his lifestyle. He left home at a fixed time every morning. But his return was never at a set time. It varied day by day. "I'm busy with various jobs as my father's successor." "Then, could you call before coming home?" "Stop nagging." "All right, I'll call," he shouted. His attitude made me feel even more uneasy. Maybe he's out playing around. Perhaps he even has an affair. I had these thoughts, but I was too scared of his shouting to confront him. In the end, I couldn't say anything, despite my doubts about his behavior. Eventually, our son Richard was born. I thought maybe he'd change a bit with a child. But he remained the same. Looking back, I think that's when I started considering divorce. Then, when Richard was about middle school age, I got a call from my mother while I was out shopping for dinner.
"What? Dad's in the hospital."
It was news of my father's hospitalization. I rushed to the hospital.
Mom's just exaggerating.
My father laughed heartily. I felt relieved. But in that moment, I remembered something and my heart leaped.
Oh no! I forgot to contact Thomas.
By then, it was too late. My mobile phone was filled with countless calls from him. When I called back in a hurry, his displeased voice came through. "Where are you? What are you doing? Hurry back and make my dinner." "I'm sorry. My father."
Huh? Your father? Your own father?
Thomas asked in a slightly harsh tone. I answered in a small voice. "Yes. He was suddenly hospitalized."
Your father has nothing to do with it. You are my wife.
I closed my eyes in fear at his shouting. I'm terrified of his loud voice. But I couldn't just let it go without responding. I braced myself and retorted. "Isn't it natural to worry about one's father? That should be okay, right?"
Shut up. Don't talk back to me.
"No, I will say this. You would rush to your own father's side, wouldn't you?" When I asked this, he suddenly fell silent. Putting himself in my shoes must have struck a chord. I thought so, but his reply was beyond my imagination.
Huh? Even if my father was hospitalized, I'd ignore it. After all, I wouldn't be troubled if he wasn't around.
I was speechless. This has to be a lie. That's what I thought, but I couldn't deny it. After much hesitation, I had said this to him. "I'm not like you. Sorry, but eat out tonight." That was all I could say, my maximum effort. I hung up the phone, still in a daze. Since that incident, I truly couldn't believe him anymore. It was then that I finally realized that the happy times before our marriage were all an illusion. Ah, I see. He wanted a housekeeper, not a wife. Saying it out loud made me sad. But I couldn't just stay sad. That's right. If I'm going to divorce, I need to prepare. I started to prepare for the divorce. And then, a few years passed. This time, Thomas's father, Joseph, was hospitalized. And his condition was quite serious. He might not be able to leave the hospital, the doctor had said. I relayed Joseph's condition to Thomas. But Thomas remained unbothered. "Does it mean it'll cost money?" "It's not the time to worry about money, don't you understand?" "I get it. I'll talk to my brother." Thomas contacted his brother James. James is married but doesn't have children. So Thomas suggested to James that he might be able to bear the hospital expenses. "Can you pay for it? We have Richard and Elizabeth, and it's tough for us." He spoke as if it was someone else's problem. It reminded me of the time my father was hospitalized. It seemed he really didn't care about Joseph. I couldn't take it anymore.
Enough. I'll figure something out and pay for Joseph's hospital bills.
"Don't forget what you just said," Thomas shouted. I nodded firmly. In the end, my words triggered us taking on the burden of Joseph's hospital expenses. Also, due to his illness, Joseph stepped down from his position as the president. And Thomas took over as the president. Regardless, Thomas didn't like that I had spoken up. Since then, he blatantly stopped coming home. Even when discussing Richard's future plans. Thomas ignored my calls and didn't return home. "Dad's not coming home again today." "I'm sorry, Richard. I'm causing you trouble." "It's okay, I don't care about Dad. But I want to go to a university in Boston." "That's right. Don't worry about the tuition, I'll manage it somehow." Soon after, Richard's enrollment in a Boston university was confirmed. Naturally, Thomas didn't see Richard off. Once Richard moved to Boston, the house suddenly became quiet. By then, Thomas was only coming home about once a week. "There's also Joseph's hospital fees, could you transfer a bit more?" "Huh? I've already transferred over half of my salary. It should be enough for you alone." The amount Thomas transferred was just a little money. Clearly, it was only a fraction of his salary. Saying over half was definitely a lie. I knew that. But I didn't have the energy to complain. Years passed, and I received news that Richard had found a job. Richard has got a job now. It's probably a good time to talk about divorce. In these years, I had prepared for the divorce. It was just a matter of timing. When and where should I say it to avoid any trouble? Such thoughts constantly occupied my mind. It's not even about not wanting to cause a scene. I laughed at myself sarcastically. Then one day, I had been to visit Joseph. After chatting with Joseph as usual, I returned home. Reaching the entrance, I was startled. For some reason, the front door was unlocked. Could it be a burglar? Tentatively, I peeked inside the house. Then I heard the sound of the TV and Thomas's laughter coming from the living room. So Thomas was home. Relieved, I entered the living room. There, Thomas was watching TV, laughing loudly. "You were home." "Yeah, I thought I'd tidy up the house a bit." "Tidy up?" His words made me look around. On closer inspection, some items in the room were missing. "Wait, it looks like some things are missing." "Yeah, I threw them out." "Your stuff?" "Threw out? My things?" Shocked, I hurried back to my room. The room was empty. No computer, no TV, not even my favorite cup. Even the bed was gone. "What's the meaning of this?" "I don't need them anymore, so I threw them out." "Don't need them? What am I supposed to do now?" I shouted, and Thomas frowned. Then he looked away and sighed. "I guess. I'm tired of supporting you." "What are you saying? I'm your wife." I retorted, and Thomas seemed irritated. He suddenly raised his voice. "Do I have to spell it out? Stop leeching off me, you useless thing." For over 20 years, I believed I had devoted myself to my husband, Thomas. Yet, this is what Thomas really thought of me. I wasn't leeching off him. I was merely devoted to him. But I can't put these thoughts into words. As my strength drains away, he continues. "Now that Richard is a working adult, you've got no reason to leech off me, right?" "But..." "Quiet! I don't want to hear your excuses." He raises his voice. "Oh, I can't do this anymore. My feelings will never reach him." At that moment, I hear something snap inside me. It's the sound of the thread of love that connected our hearts, breaking. At the same time, my feelings for him begin to fade. We were husband and wife until just now, but now he feels like a stranger. He had been using me from the start. He never loved me. Otherwise, he wouldn't blatantly cheat and try to kick me out. I don't care what happens to such a man. No, I must bring him down thoroughly. With my mind made up, I lift my face and stare intently at him. "What? Got a complaint?" "None. If you want me out, then I'll leave as you wish." I slammed the living room door shut, heading to my room. But there was nothing of mine left. "Don't bother looking. I had the garbage collectors take everything away." "Which company did you use?" "The flyer is right there." "That's the one." I picked up the collector's flyer from the floor. As I called the number, I told him, "I'll make sure you regret this." Saying that, I left the house. Soon the call connected. I explained the situation, and they understood immediately. Apparently, they had sensed something off about his behavior. The garbage collectors had kept everything as it was when they picked it up. "I'll be there shortly." "Thank you." I thanked them politely and hung up. Afterward, I visited the collector's location. I expressed my gratitude and had them move my belongings to a newly rented storage unit. I was relieved to find my belongings safe. He shouldn't think I'll just let this go. Grinding my teeth, I called Richard. I briefly explained the situation and then said, "So, I've decided to move out, considering a divorce. Richard, prepare yourself, okay?" "Oh, okay. Bye." Richard quickly ended the call. He seemed scared of me. Was I that angry? I wondered, storing my mobile phone in my bag. Then I headed to a nearby business hotel. Actually, I had already decided where to move. The reason was simple. I was planning to discuss divorce with Thomas soon. Divorce and then move there. That was my plan for starting a new life. Well, it's just a bit earlier than planned. Honestly, I wasn't in trouble. It was just moving things forward by about 2 weeks. 2 weeks in a hotel. What a waste. Can't be helped. But as a housewife, I couldn't help but think it wasteful.
Maybe I should bill him for this hotel stay? Well, whatever it is, brace yourself, Thomas.
I muttered and then started working on my post-divorce plans. About 10 days into my stay at the business hotel, Thomas called me during lunch. As soon as I answered, Thomas raised his voice.
You took my money.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. It's about Dad's hospital bills. The hospital just called asking for payment.
Oh, that's what he's talking about. I sighed as I replied. You should be the one paying, shouldn't you?
I'm no longer related to this, having been kicked out. You've been receiving living expenses from me. It should have been paid from there.
Yes, that's true.
But isn't the debit card for that bank account with you now?
I retorted calmly. However, I knew there was no money in that bank account. That's why I couldn't stop laughing.
I have the debit card, but there's no money in it. That's why I'm saying you took it.
I didn't take anything.
Don't lie. Who else could use it?
Didn't he realize that he had transferred too little? I replied in disbelief.
It was just too little money from the start. If there's no money for the hospital bills, why not use your own allowance?
Allowance. He started to panic, visibly confused. It seemed he thought I was unaware. Since the beginning of our marriage, he had been giving me handwritten salary statements. It was to hide the fact that he was siphoning off a portion of his salary. In other words, the skimmed money was his allowance.
I once asked Joseph about your salary. How much is Thomas earning? So, that's. He looked puzzled but told me. So, I knew about the skimmed money.
As I told him, he fell silent. There was a long silence, making me wonder if the call had dropped. Then suddenly, he raised his voice.
What's wrong with using the money I earned? It's your fault for using up the money I gave you.
Okay.
So? We're getting divorced. I'm going to demand compensation. You'll pay back the money you spent.
At that, I sneered. Perfect timing, I had evidence. Now Thomas couldn't escape the truth. I responded with a smile.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to get divorced too. Come to my place for the divorce discussion. What? No, but. You want to divorce, right? I've prepared evidence of your affair and am waiting.
Though I couldn't see him, his voice sounded strained.
Evidence of an affair? What are you talking about?
No use pretending.
I have the evidence photos. Evidence photos?
I could almost see him getting pale. Suppressing my laughter, I continued.
Then, I'll give you the address. Let's meet next Sunday to discuss in detail.
I gave him the address of a certain location and quickly ended the call. I had successfully set up the divorce confrontation. Now, if only I could make him apologize. Honestly, that would be the trickiest part. I steeled myself for the upcoming meeting. On the promised Sunday. I was already at the meeting place before the scheduled time. I wondered when he would arrive. Looking around, I spotted Thomas in the corner of my eye.
Over here!
I waved and called out. He looked up, surprised.
Here? Yes. Didn't I give you the address? But, this place, whose mansion is it?
Thomas looked behind me. There stood a mansion worth about $1 million. Much larger than a normal house, with a garden. A 3-story building with a basement and a theater room. Luxury cars parked in the built-in garage. Pointing at the mansion, I said with a smile.
This is my house. It's newly built, so it's beautiful, right? Your house.
Yes. I thought I'd live here after the divorce, so I started building it a while ago. Yes, the place I had called him to was my newly built house. Thomas, thinking of me as just a housewife, was understandably shocked. Pushing him from the back, I led him into the house. I guided him to the living room. Let's start our discussion. This is my lawyer. I introduced my waiting lawyer. But Thomas was too distracted. Restless, his gaze never settled. He kept looking around, not even trying to see the evidence photos of his affair on the table. Also, he didn't respond when spoken to. Frankly, the discussion was unproductive. Eventually, he asked in a quiet mutter, "How did you afford this house?" While thinking, "Is that what you're curious about?" I answered, "I just bought it, normally."
Liar. A housewife can't afford to buy a house.
It's said that to buy a $1 million house, one needs an income of around $150,000 per year. But I have that kind of income. So, I answered calmly, "I earn that much. Do you have a problem with that?"
No, but how?
I started helping out at a friend's company, and before I knew it, things turned out like this. The story goes back a few years. When I decided to divorce during my father's hospitalization turmoil, I started preparing for it. The first thing I did was look for a job. I wouldn't be able to live without a job after the divorce. So, I searched for a job to sustain myself. But good jobs aren't easy to find. That's when I consulted my close friend Linda. "Why don't you help me out with my work?" "What kind of work do you do?" "Aquaculture on land." Land-based aquaculture involves artificially creating facilities like pools for farming. There are downsides, of course, but it prevents ocean pollution. It's an eco-friendly type of farming. Linda's father started it, and now Linda had taken over. "So, you had been working there?" Thomas asked tentatively. After I started helping, the business began to thrive. I was mainly involved in negotiations and administrative work. Linda was grateful for my help, and eventually, I was promoted to an executive position. It was all coincidental, but I believe luck is part of one's capabilities. Hearing my story, he looked dejected. Then, after a moment of thought, he suddenly looked up.
"Okay. Let's pretend this divorce talk never happened. How about we start over?"
As he spoke nonsense, I coldly replied, "Are you crazy?"
"No, I genuinely want to start over with you,"
Thomas pleaded fervently. But seeing that he was only dazzled by my money, I retorted with a raised eyebrow. "I refuse to be with someone who cheats. And someone who neglects Joseph. No, about my father."
"Enough. You don't know, but I was the one paying for Joseph's hospital bills."
The money Thomas gave me was really just a little. After paying for food, utilities, and other expenses, there was usually nothing left, sometimes not even enough. He only gave me that much. Obviously, there was no way to pay Joseph's hospital bills with it. At first, I managed somehow, but later I paid them with my salary.
"And yet, you never listened to me or visited Joseph."
"Well, that's because
I can't trust someone like that."
I raised my voice, and he fell silent. Then, the lawyer discussed the compensation. Thomas couldn't say anything. He just kept his head down until the end. Eventually, prompted by the lawyer, Thomas signed the divorce papers. The compensation was set at $30,000. "So, now that the divorce is settled, you'll pay Joseph's hospital bills." "Ah." Thomas nodded reluctantly. At least he didn't argue. I felt relieved. Finally, I sent him away, as if chasing him out. It's over at last. The only regret was that he never apologized. But I had one last card to play. If I played it, he would apologize. Thinking that, a smile crept onto my face. A few days later, after leaving the company, someone called out to me from behind.
"Hey, Elizabeth!"
Turning around, I saw Thomas standing there. Don't address me so familiarly. We're divorced.
Shut up!
What did you do? He looked at me with an angry, red face. His reaction told me everything. Ah, he must have heard that news at the company. I smiled and responded. What do you think I did?
Don't joke around. Tell me how you got me fired.
He stomped his foot. His frustration amused me, and a smile escaped. Isn't it your own fault? Getting punished for having an affair with the office clerk? His affair partner was a clerk at his company. Apparently, he did whatever he wanted because he was the president. After deciding to divorce, I reported the matter to Joseph. While Joseph regretted our divorce, he was furious about Thomas's actions. When I showed him the affair evidence photos, Joseph became even more angry. Then he said to me, I want to transfer all my company shares to you. To me? What about Thomas's brother? No, to you. Use them to dethrone Thomas from his position as president. That was Joseph's plan. His company is a corporation. For a president or any executive appointment, a shareholders' meeting resolution is necessary. Of course, it can also be decided by a board of directors resolution. However, Joseph's company isn't very large. He holds most of the issued shares. This means that as a shareholder, he could make decisions alone. But it's common for small company presidents to hold the majority of shares. If I inherited all of Joseph's shares, I could exercise the voting rights alone. Nevertheless, Thomas's dismissal wasn't my decision. I informed James about acquiring the shares, and only reported Thomas's affair. The rest was up to James' judgment. James was considerate. James, huh? Why would he do whatever you say? It's not about following my orders. It's about doing what's best for the company. As I said this, Thomas collapsed on the spot. Then, he began to mutter apologies.
I was wrong. I'm sorry, please forgive me.
I won't.
If things stay this way, I'll have no job and be left destitute.
That's not my concern. It's all his responsibility. I won't forgive you even if you apologize.
Please! Forgive me! I'm begging you!
He apologized profoundly right there. I turned my back. Sorry, but there's nothing I can do. Why not? If you own the shares. I sold them to James and his wife. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. At that moment, I heard his sobbing. Of course, I pretended not to hear and walked away. After his dismissal as president, Thomas had to leave the company. He might have stayed if he had been an employee or a working director. But Thomas was arrogant, having joined the company through Joseph's referral. I refused to be an employee. He even said that. So, when he was dismissed, he was kicked out immediately. Now he's working a part-time job at a grocery store, but re-employment at his age is difficult. He's likely to spend his old age in regret and without money. As for me, being divorced allowed me to focus more on my work. There's no talk of remarriage, but I have a few male colleagues. Spring might come again for me. I was thinking about this when Richard called. I'll bring my girlfriend over sometime. That's great. I'm looking forward to it. I failed in marriage, but I don't want Richard to. But I'm sure he'll be fine. Richard is much more sensible than me.
Call 911 quick, what's happening? Oh no! On the verge of tears, panicking right in front of me is the woman who has long held the #1 spot in my personal most disliked list and has just been promoted to my Hall of Infamy, my dreaded mother-in-law. Just for reference, the runner-up is the brown intruder that takes up residence in my home every summer without any invitation. I'd rather not even utter his name. Please take a guess. The reason she's made it to the Hall of Infamy is because from this point on, I won't have to deal with her in my life. Goodbye, mother-in-law. My name is Michelle, 29-year-old office worker. I'm about to hit my 5th year of marriage with my husband, David. We don't have any kids. Yet. My husband and I work at the same company. Initially, he was my boss. I fell head over heels for him shortly after I joined the firm. Maybe my youthful vigor played a part in my relentless pursuit, but eventually he gave in and we ended up marrying. I was under the impression that I had initiated a romance, but after we married, he said, "Actually, I thought you were wonderful from the moment you joined the company." I remember how happy I was to hear this, laughing at his post-marriage confession. David is somewhat cool, or to put it another way, he seldom shows his emotions. But that doesn't mean he's cold. Quite the contrary, he's extremely emotional. When we went to see a tearjerker that was the talk of the town, David started crying heavily quite early into the film. Seeing this man, who usually appears unfazed by anything, showing this very human side made me love him even more. Our gears seemed to mesh well, and though we'd been married for a while, we led a peaceful life without any major fights. Then, an event occurred that threatened our tranquil existence. It started with a phone call.
"Hello, Michelle. My daughter's going on a long business trip. I'll be lonely, so let's get along well. Well, you haven't done much as a daughter-in-law anyway, so it's about time."
What an annoyingly sarcastic message she received after a long time of no contact. The caller was my mother-in-law, my husband's mother. From the moment we got married, she and I had never really gotten along. David knew this and told me I didn't have to try to get along with her if it was difficult. Of course, as a married woman, I wanted to be on good terms with my mother-in-law. But something unforgivable happened during our first Christmas gathering after the wedding. Before marrying David, I'd always lived at my parents' home, and regrettably, I wasn't good at cooking, relying too much on my family. When I made a fried egg, it was charred black. Once I moved out, I really appreciated my mother. When I tried to help with the cooking at the Christmas gathering, it didn't go well. "Oh, Michelle, how long are you going to spend peeling? You're really inconveniencing us." "I'm sorry, I'm not very good at cooking." "Huh? You can't cook? That's ridiculous. You're married to David and are still working. Isn't it about time you stopped?" I was ridiculed. Unable to retort, all I could do was force a smile. When we tasted the finished dish, it hardly had any flavor. Is this the taste of David's family home cooking? I thought. Then right in front of me, my mother-in-law started making a fuss. "What? You said you were good at making this dish, so I left it to you. Oh no, what is this? It's tasteless. Can you explain, Michelle?" She said this in a rather exaggerated manner. But I'd never said I was good at making the dish, let alone anything to her. I even asked, "Mother-in-law, do you not season your stew at all?" To which she glared at me. "The flavor comes from the ingredients. You don't even know that? How embarrassing." Is that so? While it might be somewhat true, I thought it would be better to add at least salt or soy sauce. But I had just followed my mother-in-law's instructions. In other words, her aim from the start was probably to embarrass me. I felt pathetic. Frustration welled up inside me, tears threatening to spill over. Is this what they call mother-in-law bullying? Will this go on forever? Such were my thoughts. Just then, my husband David suddenly stood up, took my hand, and headed towards the entrance. "Hey, what's happening all of a sudden?" My mother-in-law rushed after David in a panic, but he calmly put on his shoes. "Is it fun to start Christmas dinner with such a pointless argument?" he said to his mother, and then he forcefully shut the front door with me in tow. Throughout the ride home, David's phone kept ringing. Presumably, it was my mother-in-law. Seeing that David showed no intention of answering, I asked him, "The call, isn't it from your mom? Aren't you going to answer?" "She's always been like this. She loves belittling people, and that's why she got divorced from my father." David murmured, his gaze fixed ahead, his tone laced with sadness. When my mother-in-law realized David wasn't answering, she started calling me. David said it was fine to ignore her, so I did. Once she realized we had no intention of forgiving her, the calls from my mother-in-law ceased. After that, we didn't hear from her. However, we did receive a message from David's older sister who had been at the same gathering. My husband has one sister. She is a lot like David, not much for expressing her emotion. She isn't married yet, but I heard she has a fiancé. When I first met her, I greeted her and got a curt reply. "Oh, hello, I'm David's sister." When I expressed to David that your sister might not approve of our marriage, he just laughed. No, it's the opposite. She was thrilled to have a sister. She's just shy around new people. Trust me, she was glad to talk to you today. That's what he told me. Her message read, "Michelle, I'm sorry about Mom today. Even though you say you know nothing about cooking, I believe in you." She promised me that she, who lives with her mother-in-law, would take responsibility and handle the trouble so you can rest easy. From that point on, we never visited David's family home, and of course, we stopped communicating with my mother-in-law. That mother-in-law contacted me for the first time in years, and this was the reason. She hadn't changed a bit. Strangely, I found that refreshing. David's sister is a high-powered career woman who often travels for work, and her next trip was going to last 6 months. My mother-in-law, who hates being alone, couldn't bear it. David had told me she had no close friends because of her terrible personality. Well, we live close to David's family home, but we've had no interaction with them. So it's fine to just keep things as they are. That's how I felt, at least. Then one weekend, while David and I were enjoying a leisurely day, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Wondering who it could be, I checked the monitor and was taken aback. There, on the screen, was my mother-in-law, whom I hadn't seen in years. "Hey, your mom is here." "What?" My husband, David, also looked very surprised, so it seemed he hadn't given her our address. "Open up, quickly." As she started making a racket outside, considering the nuisance to our neighbors, we reluctantly let her in. Marching inside, my mother-in-law commented, "This is my first time here, but the furniture is so plain and dreary. Is this your taste, Michelle?" David and I both prefer simple things and have carefully chosen our interior. It may seem plain to some, but we like it. For me, David's parents' house with its clashing reds and blues is dizzying and exhausting. However, this is a matter of personal preference, and it's not about who is right or wrong. So it's not common to voice such opinions out loud. But my mother-in-law is far from common. She's the type to openly speak her mind. "Why did you come here? If you came to say such things, could you please leave?" When David spoke coldly, my mother-in-law momentarily grimaced, then she turned to me and suddenly prostrated herself. "Michelle, I'm sorry about that time. It seems I misunderstood something and caused you distress." I couldn't immediately trust her, but when I said, "I'm sorry too," she smirked for a moment, but then took my hand and suggested that we should get along better from now on. I was also pleased to be recognized by her, as I didn't want to be disliked. She proposed to David and me that we should have dinner together on the weekends. David made a worried face and asked me, "Are you okay?" But I was tired of running away, so I agreed to her proposal. "I'll prepare everything, so don't worry about anything and just come and eat." With that, she cheerfully went home. "If something happens again, let me know right away. If anything happens again, we'll cut ties completely." David's words alone were reassuring to me. We headed to David's parents' house that weekend. The in-laws' house, which I hadn't seen in years, was just as it was, but remembering what had happened made me feel a bit sick. As we entered the house, my mother-in-law greeted us cheerfully. On the table were David's favorite steak and salad, and then in a small dish, oh no, stew. Just like that day, stew was served. This time, they were lightly colored. "Come on, eat up. Eating alone isn't fun, so I got excited and made too much." Bracing for something to happen, but nothing seemed off, I took her word and started eating. As I ate, my mother-in-law watched me with a smirk. After I finished eating, she seemed unhappy. Seeing her like that, I thought, serves you right. Once back home, I immediately ran to the toilet. David was worried, asking what was wrong. "Are you okay? Should we go to the hospital?" He offered, but after taking some stomach medicine and lying down for a while, I felt better. I still felt a little unwell the next morning, so I took the day off from work. I'm sure it was because of that. That's what I thought. However, since I couldn't confirm that my illness was due to my mother-in-law's cooking, I didn't discuss it with David. After all, it wouldn't feel good to see or hear about his mother, who was supposed to be on my side, doing something as petty as harassing me. I decided to discuss it after I had solid evidence. I would come to regret this decision. The following weekend, we were invited by my mother-in-law again and headed to the in-laws' house. The menu for the day was roasted pork, and almost mockingly, there was stew in the small dish again. That day too, my mother-in-law stared at me as I ate. Once again, she watched me, my face unchanging with a bored look. Just like the previous week, I felt ill on the way home and ended up vomiting in the car. David, sensing something serious was amiss, immediately took me to an emergency clinic. The diagnosis was food poisoning. "Did you eat anything spoiled?" Without hesitation, I replied yes. Fortunately, my condition didn't worsen and I recovered by the next day. Of course, I discussed the situation with David. In fact, I told him I suspected that my mother-in-law had used spoiled ingredients in the dishes she served me. The first time I tasted the steak, I noticed an unpleasant taste the moment I took the first bite. The inside was nearly the color of raw meat. The fact that David didn't say anything made it clear that my mother-in-law had intentionally tampered with my portion. The vegetables in the stew were also nearly raw, barely cooked. Even the bread tastes stale, while David and my mother-in-law had fresh baked bread. My soup was the only one without any ingredients. The roasted pork from the other day was the same. When I flipped the meat, I could see that it was hardly cooked. Despite all this, I finished my meal entirely out of stubbornness. Seeing my mother-in-law's frustrated face as I remained unfazed, I felt a bit relieved. However, David was pretty mad at me for keeping quiet about it. The next day on his way back from work, David said he would talk to his mother and headed for their house. As expected, my mother-in-law played dumb, but David was not one to let it slide. He reportedly told her, "We are cutting ties. Don't contact us again." My mother-in-law hadn't anticipated being cut off and resisted, but David's resolve did not waver. Seeing David like this, she finally gave in and agreed to his terms, but only after proposing one condition of her own. And what's that condition? I asked. It turns out my sister is getting married. She wants to introduce her fiancé and asked us to have a meal together one last time. I don't think she'll do anything strange in front of the fiancé. Of course, if you're not comfortable, Michelle, I can go alone, he assured me. I had no desire to visit the in-laws' house ever again, but I had always received help from David's sister and I thought they wouldn't do anything strange in front of the fiancé. Deciding this would be the last time, I agreed to attend. A few days later, I received a call from my mother-in-law. Honestly, I was hesitant to pick it up, but curiosity about what she would say got the better of me and I answered the phone. Hello? I'm sorry, I didn't expect you to answer. It's about the dinner at our house. Yes, what is it? I replied impassively. My mother-in-law seemed a bit displeased, but it was I who had the right to be angry. By the time I picked up the phone, there was not a single apology for what had happened. In the end, it seemed like a light matter to my mother-in-law. I thought I could never forgive her. It turns out my daughter's fiancé has many allergies. I've never thought about it before, but I wondered about you two. You know, with the meal preparation and all, she stated. Upon hearing this, I said, is that so? We watched a program about allergy tests on TV last year and decided to take them. Turns out, we found out we're allergic to shellfish. It's surprising. It can manifest even in adults. Hearing this, my mother-in-law's voice noticeably brightened, even over the phone. Oh, is that so? I'll be careful on that day then, so don't worry. With that, she abruptly hung up. That night, I reported to David about the call from my mother-in-law. And then, when I told her about our allergy, she just hung up right away. David listened quietly to my story. The following month, the day of the meal at my in-laws' house arrived. Upon arriving, I saw my mother-in-law in the kitchen. Thinking I should help out like a proper daughter-in-law, at least for the last time, I offered to assist her. Don't come in here. We were taken aback by my mother-in-law's unusually loud voice. Alright, just consider yourselves guests today, since it's the last time, my mother-in-law insisted. We decided to take her up on the offer, wondering if it was her way of showing remorse. Just as the meal was ready, my sister-in-law texted my mother-in-law. Running late, start without me. Given the time, we decided to begin eating. The food looked normal. As I hesitantly started eating, my mother-in-law laughed and said, do you think I did something again? You're a wicked woman, Michelle. Was the food poisoning really my fault? She was still on about that when David glared at her. If you want to talk like that, we can leave right now. Whether she was frightened or not, my mother-in-law fell silent. Let's forget about what's done and done. Try the soup, Michelle. It turned out really well, she said. Forget what's done and done? The perpetrator has no right to say that. I thought to myself, but I couldn't just not drink it. As I lifted the soup bowl, David chimed in. Is it really that good? Let me try. And took the bowl from me. Wait, that's meant for Michelle, my mother-in-law shouted, but it was too late. Ugh. David suddenly looked in pain and collapsed. My mother-in-law was panicking. Call an ambulance, hurry! Why? She tried calling out to him, but he was unresponsive. My mother-in-law was on the brink of tears from the panic. As I watched her, I asked, what's in the soup? It looked like normal vegetable soup. Shut up, that's not important right now, she retorted. I'm the one who will accompany him to the hospital. I need to tell them what he ate. So what's in the soup? It's just normal vegetable soup. Isn't it? You probably already know, but the person with the shellfish allergy is David, not me. Unable to bluff any longer, my mother-in-law admitted, it's a vegetable soup with a broth made from shrimp and crab. I don't understand how this happened. I made it for you. So it would have been fine if it was me? Of course, you even lied about having a shellfish allergy. If something happens to my son, I won't forgive you. My mother-in-law, who had brazenly shifted the blame onto me, declared this while glaring at me. I had never once said that I had an allergy. It was all just her jumping to conclusions. If you understand, call the ambulance. No need to. A low voice resounded, and David, who had been in pain, slowly got up. I didn't drink the soup. I wanted to see your reaction. I didn't think it would turn out like this, though. In fact, David was the one who proposed this plan. When we first addressed my mother-in-law, David and I noticed something. My mother-in-law didn't realize, but we could clearly see the shrimp and crab that had likely been used for the broth. I looked at the food laid out on the table. There was no trace of shrimp or crab anywhere. We thought that it must be the soup and exchanged glances. Of course, David didn't touch his soup at all. If nothing happens today, I was considering reconnecting, as Michelle suggested, but you. I didn't know how serious an allergy could be, she claimed. That's not possible. Seeing her panic when David started to suffer, it was clear that ignorance was no excuse. The fact that she looked at David and thought it might be an allergic reaction was proof enough. Did you really do this thinking Michelle was allergic? I can't believe it. Never show your face to us again. When David said that, my mother-in-law snapped back, Fine, do as you wish. And to have a daughter-in-law who can't cook, it's embarrassing. I have my daughter. I'll rely on her for the rest of my life. I don't need you. And with that, she started laughing hysterically. Are you kidding me? Give us a break. Simultaneously, with that voice, the door of the next room opened. Standing there was my sister-in-law. My mother-in-law was surprised, her eyes wide open. Actually, we had told my sister-in-law everything. She thought it was something her mother would do, and depending on the outcome, she said she would cut ties too. The dinner with her fiancé was also a lie made up by David and my sister-in-law. She had sneaked back home while my mother-in-law was cooking and hid. I saw everything and I heard it all. Was this how you were planning to torment my fiancé if he didn't meet your standards? I would never do something so terrible. My mother-in-law claimed, but David shouted back, "That's exactly what you've done. Recognize that you're the one in the wrong." This left my mother-in-law utterly deflated. Anyway, pack up and leave by the end of this month. Since Dad's divorce, I've been paying the rent and the property is in my name. What? Even if you try to stay, it's useless. I'm canceling the lease at the end of this month. My sister-in-law really was getting married and had decided on a new home, and that destination was Singapore. There was no way to follow. The responsible sister-in-law had been looking after her useless mother-in-law who showed no signs of wanting to work after the divorce. Although my sister-in-law was fed up, she had told her fiancé and was still planning on living together. But she could not live with her mother who might threaten her precious fiancé's life. Her act, which disregarded life even if it was an attempt, was enough to anger my sister-in-law. It would be too late if something happened. That's what my mother-in-law had done. Even if you try to depend on us, it's futile. We have already moved and will absolutely not tell you our new address. When I said that, my mother-in-law glared at me. Also, you call me a bad cook, but after that day, I worked hard because I was frustrated. I've been going to cooking classes and have now become quite a good cook. Since I found out about David's allergy, I've been careful with our meals and even got a qualification in nutrition management and food education through correspondence. When I told her that I'm now a better cook than she is, she looked frustrated. Please take care of yourself, I said coldly, and David and I left his parents' house. After that, my sister-in-law told us that my ex-mother-in-law cried and begged her daily. She ignored all of it, and when my mother-in-law saw her packing, she called her a disobedient child and disappeared from the house. In the meantime, my sister-in-law moved and successfully departed for Singapore. Now she is married and living happily. By the way, David's father contacted him a while ago. Even though they were divorced, David and his sister sometimes stayed in touch with their father. According to him, the ex-mother-in-law suddenly appeared at his workplace. "I could marry you again, you know." For some reason, she said such an absurd thing to him. Of course, he didn't entertain the idea and had her taken away by security. However, the story didn't end there. She apparently followed him home and barged in. He already has a new family, but the ex-mother-in-law didn't seem to know and screamed, "You're cheating!" The police were called immediately and she was taken away. His father's current wife is a very cheerful person and knows about the past where he was oppressed by his ex-wife's high-handed attitude. "If she comes again, I'll brandish pans in both hands to scare her off." She seemed to be quite spirited about the situation, so it seemed okay. We don't know what happened to my ex-mother-in-law after that. With her personality, she's likely to survive, but it's certain she'll have a hard time as she has no one to rely on. It's karma. We as a couple are living peacefully in our new home. I quit my job and David was headhunted by a company with better conditions than before and changed jobs. In fact, shortly after that, we found out I was pregnant. David was present at the birth and his cry of joy echoed louder than the baby's first cry. Seeing David crying so much, the doctors and nurses were laughing, but I thought again that I was glad I married him.
My name is Olivia. I'm 35 years old. I've known my husband Nick since our college days, and we've been together for about 15 years, including the time we dated. Both Nick and I are still working at the company we joined after graduation. Both of us working makes life easier. The more income, the easier life gets. Let's do it. I agreed with Nick's words and chose to keep working after we got married. I didn't hesitate because I didn't want to waste my hard-earned career. There was also another proposal that came soon after we got married. Things at home might get tough with both of us working, right? What do you think about living with the parents? I immediately accepted the proposal. I'm delighted. I want to live with your dad and mom, and with Lola too, right? Yay! Y'all really get along well, don't you? Even dad and mom and Lola. She talks about wanting a sister in front of me. I wish she would consider my position a little. I had established a good relationship with Nick's family during courtship. Every time I went to visit, they welcomed me with a smile, and we often went out together. So I never doubted them until we got married and lived together. I was looking forward to becoming a family after marriage. There was not a single thing that made me anxious. At 5 o'clock in the morning, I turned off the alarm on my smartphone and got out of bed. I quickly got dressed and headed to the kitchen. As I put on my apron, I boiled water, took out bacon and eggs from the refrigerator for breakfast, and continued preparing for the morning. When I put the morning paper that I had taken from the mailbox on the desk, my father-in-law came downstairs from the second floor bedroom. "Good morning." "Good morning. I'll prepare the coffee." My father-in-law nodded and sat down at the dining table. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and he always goes to work before 7 because he starts early. He's a high-ranking executive at a major company, famous even at my company for being skilled. However, at home, he's only quiet and never acts high and mighty. That was delicious. When he finishes eating, he always brings his dishes to the sink. At first, when he brought them carefully, I told him, "You can leave them there." "It's alright. Let me do at least this much," he responded. He doesn't talk much, and we rarely have a chance to chat, but I think he's a very kind person. It's been almost 6 years since we started living together like this, and everything has gone as planned with only my father-in-law. At 6:45 in the morning, Lola would come stomping down the stairs from the second floor. "Oh, I'm sleepy." "Good morning, Lola." However, Lola ignored my greeting. She came to check the kitchen as is. "Ugh, I was in the mood for cereal today." "Oh, I'm sorry, I made pancakes today." I knew what was going to happen next. Ignoring my explanation just like she ignored my greeting, Lola started throwing all the pancakes I had worked hard to make into the trash. "Okay, let's make them again." Lola dumped the empty plate in the sink as if to tell me to wash it. From the first day of our marriage and living together, I received a harsh invitation into my role as a wife. And it wasn't only Lola. "Yuck, yuck, what's this? You didn't make pancakes?" At 7 o'clock in the morning, my mother-in-law would slowly wake up. Nick would casually wake up as a result of this, but "I'm sorry. Just cooperate, would you? You're going to make everyone's breakfast late." I'd initially complained that Lola had thrown the pancakes in the trash, but it seemed that my protest fell on deaf ears. Upon seeing their unsettling, gleeful grins, I realized I had been tricked. On my very first day, I already wanted to quit this co-living arrangement, but I thought given time they'd come around. However, even after 6 years, nothing had changed. I felt utterly helpless. Adding insult to injury, my very own husband, the key person in all this, masterfully ignored the whole situation. I had consulted with Nick in our first year of marriage, but all he'd done was dismiss my concerns, saying, "I'm sure they have their reasons." I never grasped what he meant. Even after repeated complaints, all he did was shift the blame, telling them exactly what I said. "Olivia doesn't like it, so you should stop." That was when I realized he wasn't just lacking tact. He simply didn't care about anyone but himself. Of course, the harassment from my daughter-in-law didn't end there. I ate my breakfast standing up, snatching bites while doing other chores, leaving no time to sit down and enjoy my meal. While having breakfast, I tidied up, did laundry, and cleaned the house. Then right after I finished, it started. "On your way back, could you pick up some snacks? Oh, and if you're going shopping, could you get my makeup too?" Needless to say, they never offered any help. The reason I wake up at 5 a.m. is because I still have a job. Preparing for the morning and making lunch ahead took quite a bit of time. I left the house at 8 a.m. every morning. Of course, my leisurely mother-in-law and the home help, Lola, didn't even bother to see me out. It's been 6 years. I've gotten used to it, but every morning I left for work, I whispered to myself, "This isn't what I signed up for." I work as an office administrator. My office hours end at 6 p.m., but often I end up working an extra hour or two. At first, I used to work overtime regularly. However, I was constantly harangued by calls to my office. "Is my daughter-in-law there? Can she stop working overtime?" As a result, I felt bad for causing inconvenience to my colleagues and superiors, and unless it was absolutely essential, I was allowed to bring work home. Usually, I got home around 7 p.m. Nick typically returned home by 8 p.m., so the first thing I had to do was prepare dinner for my mother-in-law and Lola and finish the laundry. "Can't you come home earlier? The laundry's not done yet." Of course, I didn't lift a finger to help. Neither did Lola. You can't even manage the household chores properly. I've been yelled at and even had my dinner withheld. In these cases, I still had to prepare meals for everyone else in the family. After they finished eating, they wouldn't carry their dishes and demanded coffee in the living room. I was left to clean up the dishes, prepare coffee, and run around. Nick would arrive midway through, but he never helped me out. "Pasta today? I was in the mood for pizza." "Huh? What's up? Are you in a bad mood today?" "No, just eat your food." "Alrighty." Even Nick's small remarks were getting on my nerves. After Nick and the other two had fallen asleep, I still needed to stay awake. I had to complete household chores and then finished up my work brought from the office. What should I do? At this rate, I might not be able to finish on time. Maybe I'll just do as much as I can now and continue during my lunch break tomorrow. I'm home. Father-in-law, welcome home. I apologize. I'll prepare dinner right away. I was so absorbed in my work, I didn't notice father-in-law had returned home, but he simply replied, "No, I'll take a shower first," and went into the bathroom. In the meantime, I tidied up my laptop and started preparing the meal. Once father-in-law finished eating, I cleaned up everything and went to bed. It was already 1 a.m., which was relatively early for me. The following day, I'd wake up at 5 a.m. and start another busy day. Then, one day, I collapsed at work. One morning, as I was walking around the office, I suddenly felt dizzy and fell. Thankfully, I didn't lose consciousness, and after resting in the break room, I felt a bit better. My boss told me to take it easy and gave me the afternoon off. Well, isn't it unusual for you to be home at this hour? Yeah, I wasn't feeling well. Is it just an excuse? What? Come on, you look perfectly fine to me. It's not good for an adult to use sickness as an excuse to slack off, you know. You need to work harder. I couldn't even muster the energy to be angry at their laughter and nonchalant attitude. I never had high expectations, but their insensitive words made me feel worse than angry. My body just instinctively rejected them, and I found it hard to breathe. So you can put more effort into dinner today, right? Of course, right. You've got time. We've been putting up with your quick and easy meals. You should treat us when you have the time. On that day, my husband, just like mother-in-law Lola, came home expecting a homemade meal because I had the afternoon off. He didn't think about why I got off early or showed any concerns. As a result, I ended desperately cooking steak, getting constant complaints like, "Could you cook it a bit more? Don't you have any sausages? We don't need vegetables." I had reached my limit. What? You're quitting your job? I had decided to quit my long-time job. I thought that if I focused only on housework, things might get a bit easier. I can't do this anymore. We should be able to manage with Nick's salary, right? I'm finding it hard to balance work and house chores. No, that's a bit unrealistic. At my husband's words laughed out and saying it's unrealistic, I turned pale. What? Why is it unrealistic? Because we two are contributing $1,500 to the household expenses every month, right? It'll be difficult to do that with just my salary. Well, can we maybe reduce that? I think Mom would probably say no. Well, if it's not possible, it's not possible. Just try a little harder. The sight of Nick patting my shoulder and smiling, I had never hated him more. I thought it was pointless to talk to him anymore, but it seemed like fate was on my side. The company I worked for was downsizing due to poor performance. I had the option to seek assistance for the next job placement for my company or even stay, but I chose to resign immediately. Huh? You're leaving because the company is doing poorly? Yes, that's why I'll be focusing on household chores from now on. I told Nick, who had just returned from work, that I had resigned from the company. I knew it was somewhat forceful, but I felt it was the only way to make him pull his weight. However, when mother-in-law and Lolo, who were along with Nick, heard the news, they became livid. Are you out of your mind? What about the money? If you're working, it's going to be hard on Nick. I won't allow any cutbacks. But there are things I just can't do besides juggling household chores, and work was exhausting. I believe this is a good opportunity for me. No, but you said it's impossible. We need at least $2,000 to get by. I think you can manage. After all, $2,000 is just for living expenses. Honestly, I don't believe the utilities alone can cost that much. I was under the impression that the $2,500 I was providing every month was going towards living expenses, and there had to be room for savings. Even though they adamantly said it was impossible, I believed the amount could fluctuate as it was not a fixed cost. Then I was told an unbelievable fact by mother-in-law. My head hurts. You thought that was just for living expenses? Then what are you spending it on? I thought it was all going to mother-in-law and Lo's living expenses. Let me be clear. Isn't it obvious that we need to cut back there? You're asking us to tighten our belts? What kind of wife are you? The $1,500 come from the paycheck, doesn't it? Yes, it does. The $1,500 every month was all being transferred from my account to father-in-law's. When I discussed it with Nick, we decided to handle all the payments from my salary. It was simpler to manage everything from one salary. That money, it's not for living expenses, but for the mortgage payment on the house. What? A mortgage? That includes some home improvements, so the mortgage payment is $1,500 a month. That's a fixed cost. It can't be changed. Hold on a minute. That kind of expense was supposed to be managed with father-in-law's salary. Haha, what a waste. Why should we use Nick's money when we have our own to spend freely, especially when we have a wife who's like a wallet? I was dumbfounded to be referred to as a wallet. It seemed like they didn't think of me as a wife, but merely as a source of money to exploit. And watching mother-in-law and Lila's laugh uproariously at this reality, I could confirm that Nick, with his calm smile, was just as guilty. Well, but Mom, she quit her job and doesn't have an income anymore, right? Shouldn't we get rid of her quickly? Yes, let's do that. We're under no obligation to take care of you, nor do we need to provide you with a place to stay. Wait a minute. Well, Mom's right. Sorry, Olivia. You'll need to move out until you find a job. Nick! I couldn't believe what my husband was saying to me with a smile. But the three of them, ignoring my shock, slowly pushed me towards the front door. I was too stunned to resist and found myself locked out. You don't deserve a free meal. Come back when you can pay for yourself. An unemployed wife should get lost. Bombarded with harsh words through the front door, I felt too weak to resist and walked away slowly. They didn't even let me take my stuff. All I had was the smartphone in my pocket. I thought about using it while it was charged, but in reality, the last place I would turn to for help, my family's home, was the reason I couldn't choose to divorce despite all that had happened. After walking a little in the residential area at night, as expected, a call came in from my mom. Hello? You're not thinking about coming back home, are you? Our house is in the country. It would be a hassle if you came back. Apologize properly to your in-laws. You're not allowed to come back here. Nick probably called my parents' house. He knew what kind of people my parents were. That's why I was looking forward to living together when I was being deceived. I believe they would care about me more than my own family. What should I do now? Before I knew it, I was sitting blankly on a bench in the local park. It was 9 o'clock. I needed to decide my next move soon. But my wallet. Remembering that I had left my bag with my wallet inside, I reluctantly decided to sneak back to the house. I was anxious about what might be happening at home and was secretly watching from outside when someone approached from behind. That person quietly handed me my bag. It was my father-in-law, who had found my bag at the front door after coming home from work. Several weeks had passed since I left home. During that time, there seemed to have been trouble at the in-laws' house. Where is Olivia? Come back. Come back, hurry. Hey, where are you really? I chose not to block messages, but I ignored all the notifications. I didn't feel like replying, but I was also busy at the time, so I deliberately left them hanging. A month later, I mailed divorce papers to be filled out. I also hired a lawyer referred to by my father-in-law and claimed a refund of the $99,000 for the house mortgage that I had been paying for 5 years and 6 months at a rate of $1,500 per month. I also added a small claim for compensation in the divorce proceedings against the three of them. Immediately, Nick started calling me like a demon, so I had no choice but to answer. What's with that lawyer? I won't accept a divorce. Well, let's settle in court then. Goodbye. Wait, I'm in a tough situation. Please withdraw the claim. Mom has also been served divorce papers by Dad, and he said she could do whatever she wants with the house. Mom said she wants to stay here. Why don't you support her then? That's the hard part. That's why I'm saying please come back. No way, why should I go back to such a hell? I couldn't hide my irritation as I listened to my husband's selfish claims. And right now, the parents' house is the worst situation. It's become like a garbage dump because no one's doing the chores properly. Why don't you do the chores then? That's your job as my wife. Then how about paying me for the housework? It's $12 per hour, from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. and from 7 p.m. to midnight. I'll do the housework if you can pay me monthly for these hours. You're out of your mind. There's no way I'm paying you for that. It's a wife's job to handle the housework. There's no paycheck for household tasks. My father-in-law did pay me. What? On the day I was kicked out, my father-in-law, who had handed me my bag, bowed his head deeply to me. I'm really sorry. I warned him several times, but I never thought it would come to this. Father-in-law, I know about your parents' house, Olivia. I fear that something like this might happen eventually. With those words, my father-in-law asked me to wait in front of the house for a moment. I entered the house, and after a few minutes, he quietly handed me something he had fetched. This is a banking card, isn't it? What my father-in-law handed me was a banking card in my name. Soon after we got married and started living together, my father-in-law had asked me to open an account, as he knew someone who worked at a local bank. Remember the troubles that started as soon as we moved in together? That's why I thought it would be troublesome if something happened, so I made this. I knew right away when we got married that he was doing something when I wasn't around. I warned him several times, and I was fooled by his act of pretending to reflect on his actions. So I want you to accept this money. Please consider it as my way of making amends. When I sneakily checked and there was about $200,000 in the account, I was shocked. I owe you nothing but gratitude, father-in-law. Well, I was busy with work. I think I should make up for the fact that I hurt Olivia during that time. It's a token of my gratitude for always making delicious meals for us. Thank you so much. The others used to brag about it, but actually before Olivia came, I was doing most of the housework. It's also my fault for spoiling the family. Please forgive me. I can't believe it. Also, this money is what Olivia should receive for her hard work doing housework for the past 5 years and 6 months. It's your salary for housework. I just calculated the hourly wage as $12 on my own, but I hope that's okay. I was moved by the warmth of another person, and it felt so comforting that I could only nod through my tears. If you can't afford it, then pay me. I'm done working for free. I don't care how much you guys struggle. You need to experience even more hardship. Don't say such harsh things. Please, I beg you, it was my fault. Forgive me, I'll do anything. Then my mother-in-law Lola started sobbing on the other end of the phone. I was wrong, I'm sorry. I was just enamored with a drama I watched recently. It wasn't my true feelings. I'm sorry too. I'll help with the housework from now on. I won't mistreat you. Let's get along as sisters. Even after hearing the voices of the 3 people experiencing hell, I was unmoved, because I felt that they still had the energy to plead. Nick said a moment ago that he'd do anything. Of course we'll do anything too. Yes, I'll do anything, even the house chores. I'll help too if you need anything, just tell us. Thank you. Then please pay the compensation from the divorce trial and return the $1,500 as agreed. What? That's all I'm asking from you. Well then, goodbye. With that, I hung up the phone and blocked all their contacts. A few days later, I heard that Nick's mother-in-law and Lola moved out of the house. Apparently, they were unable to pay off their mortgage, and their house is put up for auction. By the way, father-in-law, after divorcing mother-in-law, moved to a suburban house and is said to be enjoying his single life. And the 3 who were kicked out of the house are now living together in a cramped apartment, working hard to pay the compensation and refund from the divorce trial that I demanded. They agreed to pay in installments, so while it will just be a monetary relationship from here on, I've told them I'll sue if they fall behind on payments. They're risking their lives. Nick hasn't let his company find out about the incident and hasn't quit yet, but after the divorce and looking disheveled, occasionally smelling like trash, his coworkers are starting to steer clear of him. The office atmosphere is the worst for him. And me, I'm currently working at the company where father-in-law is employed. Utilizing my skills from my previous job, I've been entrusted with the role of a manager in the general affairs and HR department. It's a fulfilling job, and I want to keep pushing myself. By the way, of the $200,000, I used about $7,000 for starting my new life, but I haven't touched the rest. I plan to keep this as an emergency money in case father-in-law ever needs help.